Chapter 642. After Feng Xingjian handed over the matters in the Xingwu region and returned the Universal Astral Realm book to the Astral Ancestor, he left the Xingwang Mountain and flew toward the southern coastline. In his mind, the location of the Panwu heavenly raiment kept on surging. Previously, when I was struck by a sudden impulse and wanted to retrieve the Panwu heavenly raiment, I felt a strong sense of threat. Therefore, I didn't rush over for now. However, this time around, my abilities are sufficient. Moreover, through my sudden inspiration, there seems to be another group of people preparing to snatch the Panwu heavenly raiment. The Panwu heavenly raiment is the product of the Mountainous Sea Dynasty's painstaking efforts. It is extremely powerful and contains unfathomable powers. I can't let anyone snatch it away. At the thought of this, Feng Xingjian accelerated once again. He cut across the sky, bringing along a myriad of thunderclaps as he flew toward the location where the Wang clan's ancestor had hidden the Panwu heavenly raiment. Elsewhere, on a tropical island in the south of Miracle World, this island, which was originally desolate, was now filled with a myriad of colors. Streams of huge light pillars soared into the sky like holy light descending from the heavens, accompanied by a series of resonant hymns. On the small island, many large holes have been dug out, and mountain rocks have been broken. The entire island seemed to have turned into the shape of an altar, surrounded by streams of holy light and hymns. At the highest peak of the island, 6 men wearing long robes that fluttered in the wind stood there like immortals in heaven. Their gazes swept across the entire island. Among the 6 of them, the middle-aged man in the lead had his hands behind his back. His back was straight, and his broad shoulders seemed to be holding up the entire sky. Just by standing there, he gave off a feeling as if he was in control of the world and the sun and moon. Looking at the island that was encompassed by holy light, the man nodded and said, "That's right. This time around, our 6 clans have joined forces in order to completely suppress that divine armor. After spending 3 years, this great formation is finally going to be completed." Hearing his words, the other 5 people also showed a satisfied smile. A man with long hair and a kind countenance said, "This time around, it's all thanks to Big Brother Jacob. If it wasn't for the Holy Light Clan's formation map, we probably wouldn't have been able to set up this formation and capture that divine armor." The 6 people before him were the heads of the other 6 clans, with the exception of the enraged lion. These 6 great clans were all founded by 6 of the 8 founding experts of the empire. Over the past 200 years, they had accumulated a strong foundation and countless talents. They were a powerful force hidden in the shadows of the empire. The 6 clans were respectively the Holy Light Clan, Dark Shadow Clan, Night Massacre, Ferocious Dragon Clan, Thunder King Clan, Xingjian Clan, Thunder King Clan. The 6 great clans before him were the Holy Light Clan, Dark Shadow Clan, Night Massacre Clan, Mad Dragon Clan, Thunder King Clan, and Illusion Clan. Hearing his words, the other head of the Dark Shadow Clan also smiled. The Holy Light Clan lives up to its reputation as the #1 clan in terms of formations. I heard that the evil spirit sect that had wreaked havoc in the Northern Ice region 200 years ago was founded by a subordinate of the Holy Light Clan who had betrayed and escaped. The evil spirit sect dominated the Northern Ice region with the help of formations and was then suppressed by the Empire's army. Hearing his words, another head of the Dark Shadow Clan said coldly, "The Holy Light Clan lives up to its reputation as the best in formations. I heard that the evil spirit sect, which had wreaked havoc in the Northern Ice region 200 years ago, was founded by a member of the Holy Light Clan who had betrayed them. With their formations, they dominated the Northern Ice region and were then suppressed by the Empire's army." The head of the Night Massacre Clan was an old man with a cold expression. Hearing that, he said coldly, "This time around, we've all benefited greatly as well. If it wasn't because the 6 of us had met up and each of us revealed our great arts and shared our knowledge, we wouldn't have been able to all attain the divine level." Hearing the Night Massacre Clan's head's words, everyone present broke into smiles, their eyes filled with joy. The Dark Shadow Clan's head laughed and said, "That's right, that's right. Right now, all six of us have stepped into the divine level. With six divine level experts helping each other and joining forces, as long as we get our hands on this Panwu heavenly raiment, we'll be able to go up against the ancient path of Hell's white bone armor and Adam's shroud. By then, not only will the Empire be invincible, but we'll also be able to dominate the world. Everyone nodded. Six divine level experts, especially those from the six great clans that had a long legacy and endless secret arts. What was even more terrifying was that if the six of them joined forces and helped each other, the prowess and influence they would produce would be far too great. It would be enough for them to dominate the world. Jacob nodded in satisfaction. 10 years ago, he had unintentionally discovered the existence of the Panwu heavenly raiment. For the next 7 years, he had put in great effort to obtain the power of the Panwu heavenly raiment. Thereafter, he had contacted the other clan heads and spent a very long time to gain their trust. He had also contacted the enraged lion, but it was a pity that the enraged lion did not trust him and did not take part in their operation. However, after so many years, he had finally succeeded. Just then, there seemed to be an endless stream of data flowing through the eyes of the illusory clan's head. He said, Someone is coming, and they're also here to snatch the Panwu heavenly raiment. It seems that we can't defeat them. The illusory clan specialized in foresight, illusions, and divination. Hearing his words, the other 5 did not doubt him at all. Jacob said straightforwardly, Other divine level experts have come? That's great. We'll let them take the lead while we hide in the formation and catch them easily. Right now, he was already the pillar of support among the 6 of them. After saying this, he had already made up his mind. The 6 of them instantly turned into 6 streams of light that cut across the small island, disappearing into the formation on the small island. The light on the island, which had been filled with holy light and hymns, gradually dissipated. All the strange phenomena disappeared, and the entire island seemed to once again return to its primitive, wild, and natural state. 1 minute later, Fang Xingjian's silhouette pierced through the sky and cut across the atmosphere. With a loud rumble, he flew down from a height of 10,000 meters to a position several hundred meters above the small island. Looking at the small island before him, Fang Xingjian nodded. That's right, this is the place. Under his sudden inspiration, he could sense that there was no danger before him. This meant that even if there were enemies, they would not be a threat to him. However, a strong sense of urgency was chasing after Fang Xingjian. It was as if the Panwu heavenly raiment would disappear at any moment. He had made good use of his time. At the thought of this, with a flash, he arrived at the center of the island. A pitch-black cave with a diameter of over 100 meters appeared before him. This was a location where the Wang clan had hidden the Panwu heavenly raiment, the bottomless underground world. With a leap, Fang Xingjian dashed down toward the underground cave. Not long after Fang Xingjian entered the underground, the entire small island once again lit up with holy light, and endless hymns rang out. Jacob's countenance was cold, and his marshal will transmitted information to and fro in the formation. Good. He's really a divine level expert. We'll wait for him to go down and fight against the Panwu heavenly raiment. When he comes up, we'll refine him and the heavenly raiment together. The head of the Dark Shadow clan smiled. Illusory clan's head, it's all thanks to you this time around. Otherwise, with a divine level expert messing things up, there might still be some trouble. Greed flashed in the eyes of the Night Massacre clan's head. A divine level expert. We can make him into a divine remains equipment. However, the Illusory clan's head kept on having bad feelings in his mind. He said uneasily, I feel that something's not right. Chapter 643. The head of the Illusory clan frowned and planned to divine the future once again. He crossed his hands, instantly creating a myriad of afterimages. Amidst the endless afterimages, there seemed to be faint ripples appearing in the space. Time and space were one. Observing the flow of time from the changes in space was the Illusory clan's ultimate technique, heavenly divination. From the ripples in space, the head of the Illusory clan seemed to have seen the changes to the world's future. His countenance changed drastically, and he said to the other 5 clan heads, "This is bad. It's a great omen. There's a slim chance of survival." A slim chance of survival? When Jacob heard the illusory clan's head's prophecy, he did not dare to let his guard down. He asked puzzledly, "To think that the expert who just entered is so powerful. It might not be because of him," the head of the Dark Shadow clan said. "Perhaps some abnormality has happened to the Panwu heavenly raiment, or perhaps there are other experts who have set their eyes on this place. If the Mage Association and the Holy Sea of Truth are also targeting this place, then it's true that we'll have a slim chance of survival." Jacob's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked, "Illusory clan's head, do you have any ideas?" The eyes of the illusory clan's head seemed to be covered up by layers of fog. His eyes flashed with a mysterious glow, as if he could see through the flow of time and the various changes in the future. "This won't do. I can only see a general situation at most. Good, bad, ominous, or auspicious. If I were to encounter such a prophecy in the past, I would immediately stop my original plan. However, we've prepared this great formation for 3 years and depleted many of the treasures of our 6 great clans. If we were to give it up now, it would be really painful." Jacob nodded, and a hint of viciousness flashed in his eyes. "That's right. It would be a pity to give up now. Moreover, with the strength of the 6 of us and the 200 years of our clan's legacy, there are very few people in the world who can kill us. Even if the king and the Abyss Lord were to come, they would have to give in to us. Later on, we'll unleash our full powers. Don't be stingy with your divine weapons and equipment. This time around, we must give it our all. Of course, I don't believe that we 6 divine-level experts will have a slim chance of survival either. With the 6 of us joining forces, we can go anywhere in the world. Unless Saint Adam comes back to life or many divine emperors from ancient times descend, how can they possibly kill us so easily? Maybe I miscalculated." After 3 years of preparation, the confidence of divine-level experts, and the great greed they had for the Panwu heavenly raiment, the 6 clan heads did not give up. Instead, they became even more proactive in their preparations, targeting the Panwu heavenly raiment. On the other side, Feng Xingjian was descending at high speed, going deeper and deeper into the cave. With his speed, he could easily fly more than 100 kilometers per second. His speed was shockingly fast, but during this rapid descent, he actually couldn't see the bottom of the catacombs. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes had passed. They should have reached the Earth's core by now, but Feng Xingjian still could not sense the existence of the bottom of the catacombs. He looked up and saw that the entrance of the catacombs had become a dot of light smaller than the tip of a needle. Everything around him was pitch black, as if he was in the boundless vacuum of the universe. At this point, Feng Xingjian understood that he had fallen into a trap. It was impossible for the cave where the Panwu heavenly raiment was hidden to be so deep. Has the space changed? M.O. The deathly sword intent on Feng Xingjian's body swept out. The first thing he thought of was that the surrounding space had changed, creating some sort of stretching and expanding the space in the underground cave. It was like the scene in the Hades vault. However, after sweeping through the area, he found nothing. None of the physical particles or electromagnetic waves in the surroundings showed any signs of being stretched at all. Could it be that I've entered another space-time? A small world created by the predecessors? With a single thought, Feng Xingjian activated the Mountainous Rivers Book of the Way once again and observed the changes in his lifespan. The passage of time was the same as the decrease in his lifespan. This meant that there was no change in time, and he had not entered any space where space-time had changed. If there was no change in time, then it was purely a change in space. After confirming this, Feng Xingjian sent out his martial will with a single thought. The heaven-connecting sword physique formed a light figure, and with a flash, he darted down into the cave. His martial will spread out at light speed, and in that instant, Feng Xingjian was able to find out how deep the cave was. However, with this dash, he still did not reach the bottom. Instead, a man who wore black robes, had long hair, and was a little thin and weak appeared before him. Fong Xingjian was stunned for a moment, and his martial will flashed before the man. As expected, what he saw was his own face. Mobius strip? Endless space-time corridors? Fong Xingjian looked at his feet and above his head, and a hint of astonishment flashed in his eyes. For such a method, one would need to distort the space 360 degrees and then overlap it completely. Is it related to the Panwu heavenly raiment? Or is it someone else's method? However, now that he knew what the method was, it would be easier to deal with it. After all, the method of distorting space to create endless corridors was extremely ingenious. However, as long as the space was slightly more distorted, the space would no longer overlap and overlap perfectly. Then, there would be no more endless corridors. Fong Xingjian's martial will darted into his physical body once again. Then his eyes opened, and there seemed to be electricity flashing in them. He punched out, and violent powers gushed out in all directions. The space started to distort, and under the senses of his martial will, a small altar appeared 100 meters below him. As expected, it's a method that distorts space. With a flash, Fong Xingjian appeared before the altar. With such a method, it's probably impossible for those below the divine level to enter. Only those above the divine level will be able to distort space before being able to enter. Fong Xingjian looked toward the top of the altar. There was a throne placed in a square shape, and a man covered in golden armor was seated on it. No breathing or heartbeat could be sensed from a man in golden armor. Only a pair of golden eyes were open, looking straight ahead. This is... Fong Xingjian's martial will scan the golden-armored man's body, but he could not sense any signs of life. However, the man's vivid and lifelike appearance clearly gave him the feeling that he was a living person. Is this a statue? Or a corpse? A living person? Or a dead person? Is that golden armor the Panwu heavenly raiment? Why would it be worn by this man? Fong Xingjian gave it some thought. After not sensing any danger, he grabbed out toward the Panwu heavenly raiment. However, this time around, the golden-armored man trembled abruptly. His eyes moved slightly as he looked toward Fong Xingjian. How dare you? Who dares to attack me? As the golden-armored man spoke, a majestic golden light was emitted from his body, turning into a golden wave that gushed out toward Fong Xingjian. Chapter 644. The golden waves brought with them a world-splitting prowess. With a single attack, the space distorted into a spiral drill and gushed out toward Fong Xingjian. The prowess was so powerful that it was as if an ancient god was really creating the world. The power of this attack could send second-tier divine-level experts like the Astral Ancestor and the Blue Sacred Moonlight flying several hundred kilometers away with a single move. Moreover, the world-splitting will that it contained made it seem as if they were witnessing the universe exploding and the world being restarted. Everything in the world was produced in a great explosion. However, this move was far from enough to deal with Fong Xingjian. With a single move, Fong Xingjian turned his palm technique into a finger technique. With a tap, layers of shattering ripples flashed into space. The golden waves that were gushing out suddenly came to a stop and instantly surged back, colliding fiercely into the golden-armored man's body. With a single tap, the world-splitting prowess also surged back. The golden-armored man let out a stifled snort and took 3 consecutive steps back. The throne and sacrificial altar under his feet had already turned into dust. He looked at Fong Xingjian, and his eyes were clear as if he had really just woken up from a deep slumber. I've finally woken up. His eyes shone brightly, and a powerful aura exuded from his body. He was just like Panga the Great in the Legends of the Western Land, who had once split the world apart. This time around, his will really scanned Fong Xingjian, and it was no longer an instinctive reaction from before. Upon seeing Fong Xingjian, his eyes immediately gleamed. Foolish mortal, to think that you dare to disturb my slumber. You're really courting death. Insignificant trash, how dare you speak to me like this? I'll wipe out your consciousness completely and turn you back into armor. Hearing Fong Xingjian's words, The golden-armored man's eyes seemed as if they were about to spurt out flames of fury. This golden-armored man was not a real human. Instead, he was a will that had been born from countless memories after the Panwu heavenly raiment absorbed ether particles day and night. After the heads of the 6 great clans discovered the Panwu heavenly raiment, they also discovered the will contained within it. In the end, after exchanging blows, they were defeated by the Panwu heavenly raiment and fled. This was why they spent a great amount of time setting up formations, wanting to gather the powers of the 6 great clans to suppress the Panwu heavenly raiment. After defeating the heads of the 6 great clans, in order to prevent himself from being disturbed again, the Panwu heavenly raiment distorted space and set up an endless corridor to protect him from being discovered by others. During this period of time, due to the world's metamorphosis, the density of ether particles had increased once again, causing his consciousness to become increasingly mature and more like a human. The Panwu heavenly raiment came from the legendary Pangu's martial prowess, who had created the world in the Western land. Therefore, after the Panwu heavenly raiment gained consciousness, it took on the appearance of the legendary Pangu the Great. In order to suppress the world, the Mountainaceae dynasty had exhausted countless resources to forge this ultimate divine armor. Although the Panwu heavenly raiment's consciousness was still not strong enough, and his martial will was unable to unleash the full powers of the Panwu heavenly raiment, it was still equivalent to a Tier 3 divine level expert. Once he continued to sleep, continuously absorbing memories, engulfing ether particles, perfecting his consciousness and personality, and truly being able to unleash the powers of the Panwu heavenly raiment, his battle prowess would be comparable to that of a Tier 4 or even 5 divine level expert. As they had not experienced the world's metamorphosis, the Mountainaceae dynasty's understanding of the divine level had only stopped at around Tier 4 of the divine level after reading through countless ancient texts. This showed how much effort they had put into the Panwu heavenly raiment. Therefore, the Panwu heavenly raiment had the right to be arrogant. He knew that as long as he continued to sleep in the underground cavern, he would definitely shock the world the moment he appeared. With the powers of a Tier 4 or even 5 divine level expert, even a mage association and the Holy See of Truth would have to show him some respect. Even as an expert who possessed the powers of a Tier 3 divine level expert, he could look down on 99% of the experts in the world. He would even dare to stand up against the Empire's royal family. Faced with Feng Xingjian, he did not think much of him. "Lad, you'll pay the price for your arrogance." The Panwu heavenly raiment looked at Feng Xingjian as if he was looking at a dead person. He struck out with his palm, which turned into a huge golden palm. It was as if it was compressing space, pushing layers of stacking spatial ripples toward Feng Xingjian. As Feng Xingjian spoke, Feng Xingjian made his move once again. This time around, he unleashed the full power of 1,150 points of his martial will. Taking a step forward, he appeared before the Panwu heavenly raiment as if he had teleported. Then he slapped down with his palm, and the seething power brought up layers of stacking spatial ripples. The entire underground cavern instantly turned blurry, and all the light rays were distorted into clumps. Vision, hearing, touch, and smell were all rendered ineffective. It was as if even space had been shattered by this attack. The Panwu heavenly raiment's huge golden palm also instantly exploded, as if tofu had collided against a diamond. At the sight of this scene, the Panwu heavenly raiment's countenance finally changed. The ferocity of Feng Xingjian's power far surpassed his imagination. With a single move, the space was distorted, almost depriving him of all external senses. He was unable to see or hear anything, and it was as if he had returned to the eternal darkness before the universe was born. This phenomenon was something that Feng Xingjian had achieved when he exchanged blows with the undying Xia's clone before he had attained the divine level. However, the ferocity of Feng Xingjian's power was many times stronger than the previous time. In the distorted space, the Panwu heavenly raiments will seem to have been brought into many vortexes, unable to sense any bit of information in the surroundings. Up, down, front, back, left, right, and even the direction could not be distinguished. This was a new move that Feng Xingjian had created after condensing the heaven-connecting sword physique and attaining the second tier of the divine level. It was called the Chaotic Strike. What ferocious power! Who on earth is this person? To think that his martial will is so powerful and condensed that it has surpassed the third tier of the divine level. The Panwu heavenly raiment finally realized the difference between him and his opponent, and his face was filled with astonishment and terror. However, as he had lost all senses towards the outside world, he was unable to even escape. He could only take on this palm attack from Feng Xingjian. With a soft sound, the Panwu heavenly raiment's body shattered inch by inch, and the man he had transformed had turned into many light spots, once again turning into a pure gold armor. The armor burned with pure gold flames, sending out waves of majestic power. Feng Xingjian grabbed the Panwu heavenly raiment in his hand, and the man's enraged bellow rang out. "Who on earth are you? How dare you attack me?" However, although your strength is unrivaled, it's impossible for you to really break through this armor. You'll never know how powerful the Panwu heavenly raiment is. With me in this armor, you'll never be able to defeat me. When my martial will attains great mastery and I'm able to unleash the power of this armor, it'll be the day you die. Chapter 645. "Oh," Feng Xingjian said calmly. "Is that so?" As Feng Xingjian spoke, he clenched his fists tightly and instantly shattered before reassembling. He appeared before the Panwu heavenly raiment and struck out with another punch. The air was struck into a vacuum, and the space moved like curtains. Frenzied powers gushed out incessantly toward the Panwu heavenly raiment, causing this divine armor to spin incessantly like a spinning top that was being whipped. The power of this punch was even more ferocious than before. The Panwu heavenly raiment also seemed to be slightly astonished, but it immediately reacted. "It's useless." The Panwu heavenly raiment is the culmination of the Mountainous Sea dynasty's efforts over several decades. It's impossible to break through. Feng Xingjian naturally paid no heed to him, bringing along the majestic powers of the heaven-connecting sword physique and his physical body. He slapped out fiercely onto the Panwu heavenly raiment. With this palm strike, it was as if the heavens and earth were collapsing and the mountains and rivers were collapsing. There were only a few ripples in space, and there was no feeling of the five senses being sealed. It was because Feng Xingjian had not used this palm strike to distort space and seal the five senses. Instead, he had purely used all his violence to strike the Panwu heavenly raiment. Under this palm strike, the Panwu heavenly raiment trembled intensely. The Panwu heavenly raiment's consciousness, which was deep within the divine armor, had a distorted expression as it bellowed furiously. "How many times do you need me to say this before you understand? It's useless. No matter who you are, it's impossible for you to break through this divine armor." Feng Xingjian still did not say a word. He once again punched out at full power, smashing it onto the Panwu heavenly raiment. The Panwu heavenly raiment instantly spun and flew out into the sky. Feng Xingjian's body shattered, and his martial will moved at light speed, once again reassembling his physical body. It was the movement akin to light speed of a second-tier divine level expert. He caught up to the Panwu heavenly raiment in an instant and struck out with another punch. The Panwu heavenly raiment trembled even more intensely, and it was sent flying out of the underground cavern. Faced with Feng Xingjian, who had caught up to it, Feng Xingjian took another punch. Although the Panwu heavenly raiment had been forged after the Mountainous Sea dynasty had spent a great deal of effort, their legacies were still limited. The dynasty did not have any divine-level experts who had experienced the world's metamorphosis, and their understanding of the divine-level theories was only up to Tier 4. Therefore, although the Panwu heavenly raiment had used up countless precious materials, its power was ultimately not as terrifying as the Hell's white bone armor forged by Saint Adam. Moreover, right now, Feng Xingjian had attained the second tier of the divine level condensed the heaven-connecting sword physique and transitioned into the eternal sword seigneur. His strength had even surpassed that of a third-tier divine level expert. Even if a fourth or fifth-tier divine level expert were to come, the victor would only be known after they fought. The 3 consecutive punches that Fang Xingjian struck out caused the Panwu heavenly raiment to tremble crazily in the sky. It was like a huge bell releasing loud buzzing sounds. The entire divine armor was unable to move from the impact of the punches. Just like that, the punches landed on the Panwu heavenly raiment one after another. The trembling of the Panwu heavenly raiment grew increasingly intense, and the speed at which it rotated also grew increasingly faster. There seemed to be rattling sounds ringing out in void space, as if something was about to shatter. With a martial will of 1,150 points and a physical strength of over 500 points. At this moment, Fang Xingjian unleashed his full power explosively, perfectly displaying the word power. The vital energy and blood throughout his entire body seethed, and every muscle, every bone, and every hint of his will were tensed up to an extreme, crazily drawing out his own powers. Fang Xingjian punched out 9 consecutive times, each punch with a greater prowess and softer sound. It was because in the end, the entire area within a range of several thousand meters had been compressed into a vacuum by the violent powers. This was only caused by a small portion of the repercussive waves, causing the entire island to be temporarily silent. After throwing out 9 consecutive punches, Fang Xingjian stopped in midair. His body had turned completely red, just like a cooked prawn. If someone were to take a look at his body temperature, they would discover that it had reached 500 degrees Celsius. White steam kept on coming out from the surface of his body, making him look like a big steamer basket. Before him, the Panwu heavenly raiment had become dim and lusterless, as if it would completely break down at any moment. It was as if a white swan had been beaten up to become an ugly duckling. The Panwu heavenly raiment's consciousness hid in the deepest parts of the divine armor, trembling as if it was deeply astonished by Fang Xingjian's power. How is this possible? Who on earth is this person? How can there be such a terrifying person in this world? To think that he's going to crush the Panwu heavenly raiment? Just as Fang Xingjian chased after the Panwu heavenly raiment and struck it out of the underground cavern, the heads of the 6 great clans instantly reacted. However, they did not make a move immediately. Instead, they waited for Fang Xingjian to finish throwing out 9 consecutive punches and for the Panwu heavenly raiment to be weakened to an extreme. It's coming. Jacob's martial will bellowed furiously in the minds of the other 5 clan heads. Now, do it. In an instant, 6 light pillars soared into the sky, and the entire tropical island was surrounded by countless holy light and hymns. An intense pressure descended from the sky, as if God's gaze had landed on this place. Jacob floated up, opened his mouth, and invisible sound waves filled up the entire island. Light is with me. Holy light bestow upon me power. He made 2 seals with his hands, and then he made hundreds of seals in succession. The sky suddenly darkened. It was not just the sky that had darkened. The sky within a range of several hundred leagues had sunk into darkness. Endless light seemed to have been snatched away, absorbed, and gathered in the sky above the tropical island. Demons, kill! In the sky above the tropical island, a bronze door opened up slowly and endless light shot out. All sorts of feathers, holy light, hymns, and all sorts of existences, both tangible and intangible, gushed out. The gates of heaven, the formation that Jacob had led the 6 great clans to set up, had the ability to gather all light rays within a range of several hundred leagues and attack the target. How terrifying was the heat and light energy from the light rays within a range of several hundred leagues. The condensed light rays could incinerate the entire city with just a single shot. However, what was even more terrifying was that as the sun's rays shone down, there was an almost endless amount of energy that could be unleashed without stopping. A white light pillar shot out from the gates of heaven like a divine sword that could split the world apart. It engulfed Fang Xingjian with just a single shot, and struck the surface of the sea at an oblique angle. Within a short 1 second, several 100,000 tons of seawater had been evaporated, causing a stretch of steam to rise from the heat. It's a success. Jacob was overjoyed. The light rays from the gates of heaven are formed by condensing the light energy within a range of several hundred leagues. They are also augmented by the powers of our 6 experts. Moreover, due to their characteristic of moving at light speed, there was no time to dodge when they were shot out. The power contained within them can vaporize the physical body of a Tier 1 divine level expert with just a single shot. Although this person is strong in terms of martial prowess, he has depleted too much of his energy in order to attack the Panwu heavenly raiment. This is the moment when he is at his weakest. However, Jacob would never underestimate anyone. This was especially so for an expert who could give the Panwu heavenly raiment a thrashing before them, causing the divine armor to be unable to resist at all. Chapter 646. However, 3 years ago, the 6 of them had yet to attain the divine level and were not a match for the Panwu heavenly raiment. However, now that the 6 of them were divine level experts and had set up the formation of the gates of heaven on the island, how could they possibly be afraid of Feng Xingjian? It's a pity. This person is probably an expert of his generation. However, to barge into our great formation, it's like he didn't take the path to heaven, but chose to barge into hell instead. At the next moment, Jacob once again formed seals, guiding the sunlight within a range of several hundred leagues to gather there. Amidst crackling explosions, the air was heated up to the point of boiling like water. Another 7 beams of light shot through the location where Feng Xingjian was, and violent heat and light energy seethed in the atmosphere. The entire sea went berserk. As the seawater was evaporated, large areas of whirlpools and tsunamis were formed. After a series of 8 beams of light that could vaporize a Tier 1 divine level expert, Jacob was still not at ease and shot out another 6 beams of light from the gates of heaven. It was only when the entire tropical island seemed as if it was going to be destroyed by the remnant heat waves from the formation that he stopped and said, "Go up and get the Panwu heavenly raiment." Throughout the entire process, the Panwu heavenly raiment stayed at the side with a weak aura, not daring to move at all as he watched this scene in a daze. To think that these people have all attained the divine level now, that I defeated them with ease 3 years ago. And what kind of formation did they set up? To think that its prowess is so terrifying? Even the Panwu heavenly raiment probably won't be able to fend off the prowess of such a great formation easily. He watched as Feng Xingjian, who had been extremely ferocious earlier, was engulfed by those terrifying light rays. The terrifying energy contained within them was a ghastly sight. What was even more terrifying was that there were over 10 such light rays coming at him at once. The Panwu heavenly raiment felt a deep sense of terror, seeing that the Night Massacre clan's head had arrived before him and was about to grab him. The Panwu heavenly raiment no longer dared to resist and allowed himself to be grabbed. However, just as the Night Massacre clan's head's hand was about to grab the Panwu heavenly raiment, a stream of sword light flashed and slashed the Night Massacre clan's head, chopping off his hand. Yitu's countenance changed, and he was about to circle around the sword light to continue capturing the Panwu heavenly raiment when even more sword light descended. His body was instantly slashed into over 100 pieces, exploding into a pool of blood that splattered into the sky. The Black Marshal will let out an agonizing cry and escape. In an instant, the Night Massacre clan's head, who was a Tier 1 divine level expert, had his physical body shattered, and his martial will was severely injured. The other 5 clan heads were greatly astonished as they stared at the figure who had made a move. Feng Xingjian slowly walked out from the steaming mist, for white bone daggers had already pierced through Feng Xingjian's ribs. 3 of the daggers' hilts were linked together to form a trident on Feng Xingjian's back. The other white bone short sword was gently held in Feng Xingjian's hand, exuding waves of killing aura that seemed to be material. The celestial eradication sword formation was activated, and the 4 long swords were like amplifiers, rapidly increasing Feng Xinjian's powers. The ether particles and physical particles within 100,000 meters unleashed waves of ferocious energy tides, gushing out toward Feng Xinjian. Sensing the endless sword cheese and sword intents condensing around Feng Xinjian, the 6 clan heads were all on tenterhooks. This was especially the first time since the start of the battle that Feng Xinjian was holding onto his sword. Do you guys want to die so badly? Jacob only felt a wave of terror in his heart. It was as if someone had placed a sword against his neck, and his life was being controlled by someone else. While he was secretly shocked at the other party's intense killing intent, he forcefully raised his will to resist the other party's aura. Jacob smiled coldly and said, "Lad, it's true that you're very strong and can even move at akin to light speed. You're already at Tier 2 of the divine level, right? However, the 6 of us divine level experts have joined forces and even set up the gates of heaven's formation. So what if you have godly sword arts? The 3 years of hard work we've put in is no small matter. Right now, in this formation, even if the Abyss Lord were to come personally, or even if His Majesty were to come, we'd still be able to put up a fight. Or do you think that you're stronger than the people from the ancient path of hell? What do you want to talk to him about?" The Night Massacre clan's head managed to reassemble the form of his martial will with great difficulty. He looked at Feng Xinjian with extremely venomous eyes. "Kill him and crush his consciousness. He destroyed my physical body. Someone to take over his body." In the gates of heaven in the sky above the small island, holy light once again condensed. Lumps of light surrounded the center of the gates of heaven, emitting waves of light. Contrasted against the surrounding darkness, it was as if heaven had really descended. "Activate the formation," the Dark Shadow clan's head said with a cold smile. "He's at the 2nd tier of the divine level anyway, and can transform his will into flesh and blood. After we evaporate his body a few more times, he'll know fear." The 6 clan heads activated the formation once again. No one thought that Feng Xinjian would be able to fend them off. Their gazes when looking at Feng Xinjian were filled with blatant greed. A 2nd-tier divine level expert was such a rare material. If they could trap him in the formation and leave behind a portion of his remains, it would be enough to make up for a large portion of the expenses they had spent on setting up the formation over the years. In an instant, the holy light in the gates of heaven condensed to an extreme. The light rays seemed to have turned into something material, and they were like water droplets that were about to flow down from the gates of heaven. Boom! A sound that sounded like an avalanche rang out from the depths of the gates of heaven. Milky white holy light burst out, instantly encompassing Feng Xinjian's entire body. Too weak. Amidst the white light pillar, black deathly sword intense burst out. With a slash of Feng Xinjian's sword, the holy light was split into 2. What? Jacob looked at this scene in astonishment. His hand seals flickered once again, and another 3 beams of holy light burst out from the gates of heaven. However, this time around, the black sword in Feng Xinjian's hand flashed, and he slashed out another 3 beams of holy light consecutively. The 3 beams of holy light that had been slashed past him and shot into the sea, vaporizing several million tons of seawater at one go. They stirred up huge waves that seemed to want to engulf the entire island. Not only that, at the same time that the holy light was slashed out, Feng Xinjian had already charged toward the gates of heaven while facing the holy light. What is he trying to do? The Night Massacre clan's head asked in astonishment and fury. Damn it, he wants to attack the gates of heaven, Jacob said furiously. The gates of heaven in the sky was their holy light clan's secret treasure that had been passed down for generations. It was also the core of the entire gates of heaven formation and the crux of everything. Dream on. The will of the Dark Shadow clan's head bellowed furiously in void space. The closer we get to the gates of heaven, the stronger the prowess of the holy light. Activated at full power. There's no way to hold back anymore. Kill him. The 6 of them activated the formation at full power, and the entire gates of heaven started to tremble intensely. Streams of milky white light shot out from the center of the door, gathering together and eventually turning into a light pillar that plunged down from the sky. It engulfed Fong Xingjian's body like divine punishment. Chapter 647. 1 beam, 2 beams, 3 beams. A total of 12 beams of divine light converged into one. Their prowess could vaporize an entire peninsula, and even the Panwu heavenly raiment trembled in terror. However, this full-powered attack was still slashed apart by Fong Xingjian with a single sword attack. The long sword slashed out as if it was slicing through white cloth, and Fong Xingjian charged up to the gates of heaven while withstanding the holy light that had split everything into two. With a swoosh, the sword slashed onto the gates of heaven, causing the entire gates of heaven to bellow furiously. It was like an enraged wild beast, and white flames burned all over its body. It's useless to think that you dare to take the initiative to attack the gates of heaven. You're really extremely foolish. Seeing how the gates of heaven was being attacked, Jacob spoke in disdain. The gates of heaven was a divine remains equipment that the Holy Light clan had spent several centuries, harvesting countless heavenly and earthly treasures, and absorbing the faith of the people for over 100 years to create. Moreover, it was in the formation and had received the reinforcement from the martial wills of the 6 divine level experts, as well as the protection from the sunlight within a range of several hundred lis. It could be said to be extremely tough. As long as the sunlight was not extinguished, it would be hard to break through. The reinforcement from the gates of heaven was many times more profound than the reinforcement from the formation set up by the Northern Ice Region's Henry clan over the past 100 years. Unless the power unleashed by the attacker instantly surpassed the amount of sunlight within a range of several hundred lis and the reinforcement from the 6 divine level experts, it would be hard to break through this formation. However, the moment he finished speaking, Jacob's expression froze on his face. Fong Xingjian let out a cold snort and slashed out once again. The 3 white bone-short swords floating behind him released a piercing glow. They were like 3 small suns, exuding a myriad of sword light. The celestial eradication sword formation was activated at full power. At the next moment, the white bone-short sword in Fong Xingjian's hand brought along layers of light. It was as if it had slashed through space, bringing up a series of sword marks as it slashed fiercely onto the gates of heaven. With a loud, tearing sound, it was as if a bolt of lightning had torn through the sky. Long sword marks spanned across several tens of kilometers, hanging in the sky. Under the sword marks, a long hole was torn open on the gates of heaven. Almost 3/4 of the gates had been slashed open, and white light flickered as if it would be extinguished at any moment. At the sight of this scene, Jacob, the head of the Holy Light clan, trembled as if someone had dug out a piece of flesh from his heart. A great treasure that had been passed down his clan for several centuries had been destroyed on him, just like that. How could he not be infuriated and feel heartache? Fight it out with him. Jacob bellowed furiously. Just as he was about to activate his secret technique, he saw Fong Xingjian's body shattering. Sword lights swam about in void space as killing intent soared into the sky. The martial will of the Night Massacre clan's head moved slightly, but was already encompassed by a stretch of darkness. With a single chaotic strike, his 5 senses were stripped away. Before he could even react, he had already been minced into dust by a stream of sword light. The Dark Shadow clan's head glared furiously, and the over 10 superior divine weapons on his body shone with light. A line of blood appeared on his forehead, and his brain and will had been destroyed. The ferocious Dragon clan's head let out a piercing cry, and his entire body was covered by layers and layers of dragon scales. He activated his true dragon bloodline, and his body seemed to have turned into a divine-level ferocious beast. However, he was still sliced into two by a sword attack in void space, as if he was slicing through tofu. At the next moment, a myriad of sword light burst out on his body, and each piece of his flesh and every bit of his will was sliced into pieces. The Thunder King clan's head was engulfed by the myriad of sword light. His entire body flashed with endless electric light, and he exploded like a bomb, dissipating into the air. The illusory clan's head dodged 3 streams of sword light consecutively. A soft gasp rang out in void space, and a sword mark split open on the illusory clan's head's body. He had died under the instant sword attack. In less than a second, the gates of heaven had been slashed through, and the 5 clan heads had instantly lost their lives. Jacob felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured on his head, and his fury turned into terror. The white-boned short sword in Fang Xingjian's hand had already landed on his head. However, just as Jacob was about to be killed with a single sword attack, a palm appeared before Fang Xingjian. Enough, Fang Xingjian. Behind Jacob, a middle-aged man wearing yellow robes and a crown with a dignified expression had unknowingly appeared there. The man's eyes gleamed brightly, as if they contained all sorts of human emotions. It was as if he could see endless compassion, kindness, and love, as well as brutality, craftiness, and cold-bloodedness. It was as if he could see the entire human society. He put out his palm, and the prints on his palm were like mountains and rivers, as well as the sun, moon, and stars, bringing along endless power. The man's palm gently supported Fang Xingjian's sword. That long sword which could slash open the gates of heaven and kill 6 divine-level experts seemed to have encountered a natural mode, unable to move any further. Looking at the man behind him, Jacob was taken aback, and his eyes filled with astonishment. Alexander? The man who had appeared was the Empire's ruler, the leader of the Krieg royal family, and the Empire's emperor, Alexander Krieg. Although he had said earlier that if the emperor were to come, they would be able to put up a fight with the formation. However, when this strongest man in the empire really appeared, Jacob only felt endless terror. Looking at this empire's ruler, an existence who had single-handedly suppressed the world and led the 8 regions for several decades, an intense wariness flashed in Fang Xingjian's eyes. Fang Xingjian, Jacob, the 2 of you are my subjects. Don't kill each other. Alexander's finger lightly flicked across Fang Xingjian's white-boned short sword. Fang Xingjian only felt a hint of ripples flash across the sword, and then, accompanied by a huge tremor, he had no choice but to pull his sword back. This is directly distorting space to transmit my power, allowing me to go up against myself. Fang Xingjian's eyes narrowed slightly. Such means? Is he at tier 4 or 5 of the divine level? The Emperor's power far surpassed Fang Xingjian's expectations. He had thought that no matter how deep the Emperor's accumulations were and how rich the royal family's resources were, it would already be amazing for him to be able to reach tier 3 of the divine level. However, by the looks of it, the Emperor might already be at tier 4 of the divine level or even tier 5 of the divine level, able to casually distort space. This was why he was able to flick away his white bone short sword with a single finger. If he has a cultivation at tier 4 of the divine level, then he would also possess the sudden inspiration ability. So that's why he's here to stop me. As if he knew what Fang Xingjian was thinking about, Alexander looked at Fang Xingjian with admiration and said, Fang Xingjian, you're a talent, and I admire you a lot. Both you and Jacob are my good subjects, and there shouldn't be internal strife. If you have the time, you should serve the country well. Chapter 648. Oh, Fang Xingjian said coldly. Even though I crippled the first prince, you're not going to seek revenge from me? Alexander smiled and said, In my eyes, all of you are my children. What's the big deal about children fighting each other? Moreover, it's true that George is a little obstinate and self-opinionated. This setback will be good for his growth. As for his cultivation being crippled, he can just cultivate it back. If my son doesn't even have this bit of boldness, then there's no need for him to inherit the throne. Hearing the conversation between the 2 of them, great waves surged in Jacob's heart. This guy is called Fang Xingjian, the person who invented the rebirth sword technique. The last time I heard from a younger generation in my clan, he was only a conferred knight. To think that he has already reached tier 2 of the divine level and is so strong? What kind of talent is this? There's never been such a person in history before. Jacob's eyes were filled with astonishment. Moreover, Even though he crippled the first prince, the emperor didn't kill him. Jacob knew very well that this emperor was a true emperor. Not only did he have unfathomable abilities, but his character was also extremely merciless. In his eyes, everyone was someone who could be sacrificed and made use of. He appeared like a benevolent father who saw all living beings in the world as his children. However, since he saw all living beings as his children and was never stingy in sacrificing them, Jacob did not doubt Alexander's boldness at all. As the saying went, when one was compassionate to the extreme, one would be cruel, and when one was cruel to the extreme, one would be compassionate. In Jacob's heart, Alexander was an existence that could freely switch between being cruel and compassionate, heartless and sentimental, kind and evil. The fact that Alexander was able to let Feng Xingjian off even when the first prince had been crippled meant that Feng Xingjian held great value. Hearing Alexander's words, Feng Xingjian was also slightly stunned. He shook his head and said, "I find it hard to believe your words. But regardless of whether you want to seek revenge or not, I'll accept it at any time. As for today, this person set up a formation to kill me. Of course, I'll have to kill my way back. Oh, do you know who you're facing? Jacob, the head of the Holy Light clan. He and the 5 people you've killed are all clans that have existed since the founding of the country. They're aristocrats that have a legacy of several hundred years. So what? If I want to kill someone, it has nothing to do with his identity, background, or inheritance." Feng Xingjian said coldly, "Indeed, with your swordsmanship, you can kill them. But what if I want to stop you?" With Alexander's light words, the atmosphere at the scene suddenly became 10 times more silent, and the air seemed to be so stuffy that water was about to come out. Feng Xingjian and Alexander fell silent at the same time. Feng Xingjian did not say a word. Alexander looked at Feng Xingjian with a smile that was not a smile, as if waiting to see how he would answer. Looking at the situation before him, Jacob heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, feeling as though he had just escaped death. When the white bone dagger in Feng Xingjian's hand landed on his head, he really thought that he would not be able to escape death. Feng Xingjian's swordsmanship was godly and extremely ferocious. Despite Jacob and the other 5 going all out, they were unable to stop him in the slightest. However, at the next moment, the situation took a turn for the worse. Alexander had appeared to stop Feng Xingjian, saving Jacob, and even wanted Feng Xingjian to give up on killing him completely. Looking at the silent Feng Xingjian, Jacob could not help but laugh. It was true that Feng Xingjian was very strong. His swordsmanship was extremely amazing, and his talent was also a demonic existence. But so what? Faced with Alexander, the #1 person in the empire, he has no choice but to give in. Faced with the empire's royal family, the ancient path of hell, and a power that is even stronger than him, you'll still have to give in. Jacob stared coldly at Feng Xingjian as he continued to scheme. Seems like from today onward, our few great clans will have to submit to the royal family. Otherwise, we'll have to constantly be threatened by Feng Xingjian. Alexander is really a good schemer. But no matter what, he was the one who saved me. In comparison, I must think of a way to get rid of this Feng Xingjian. At the thought of this, Jacob's eyes narrowed, and there seemed to be endless schemes and schemes flashing in the depths of his pupils. Today, he had really been tricked by Feng Xingjian. Not only had the gates of heaven, which had been passed down for several centuries, been destroyed, but his 5 clan heads had also been killed. He had also suffered from serious injuries, and his 3 years of hard work had been destroyed. At the thought of this, his gaze toward Feng Xingjian was filled with resentment and vengeance. However, he had survived in the end. As long as he could survive today, he would let Feng Xingjian know what true terror and regret were. It's true that you're extremely powerful in martial arts, but your subordinates, your teachers, your disciples, your family, and your friends might not be the same. At the thought of this, Jacob gritted his teeth and looked at Feng Xingjian with a hint of complacency. We have plenty of time. Let's play slowly in the future and see how I'm going to *CK you up. What happened today will be the thing you'll regret the most in your entire life. At the thought of this, Jacob looked at Fong, Xingjian's expression, and became increasingly complacent. He was certain that Fong Xingjian would not dare to make an enemy out of Alexander, and he knew that he was safe. However, at the next moment, he realized that he was wrong, ridiculously wrong. Alexander, if I want to kill someone, no one will be able to stop me, not even you. Silently, an intense pain was transmitted into his brain. He lowered his head and looked at his chest. Unknowingly, a sword mark had split open on his body. It was as if his body had split open on its own, and a large amount of blood splattered out like a rain of blood. Jacob's expression stiffened. At the next moment, even more cracks covered his body densely, instantly slashing it apart. It was as if there had been so many sword marks on his body to begin with. The instant sword was a sword attack that could slash out from non-existence. Looking at Jacob's shattered body, Alexander was also infuriated. Fong Xingjian. With that, he waved his hand, and layers of ripples encompassed Jacob. During this process, Jacob's martial will had been shattered twice consecutively. The instant sword, which could slash out outside of time and space, was not something that he could fend off. By the time he reacted, he had already been hit by the sword. However, after the ripples brought up by Alexander's palm encompassed Jacob, Fong Xingjian's instant sword passed through the entire stretch of ripples, unable to hurt Jacob in the slightest. This was a move that only those at Tier 5 of the divine level could cultivate in the ancient path of hell, deities and ghost separation. The space inside and outside has been completely cut off. Folded space? Compressed space? Fong Xingjian's countenance changed. When his instant sword slashed out toward Jacob, it passed through his body and appeared behind him. It was as if the space encompassed by the ripples did not exist at all. Alexander said coldly, "This is the deities and ghosts separation technique that is passed down in secret in our ancient path of hell. It's impossible for you to break through it. Fong Xingjian, I'll give you one last chance. Are you sure you want to make an enemy out of me? Why do you need to say so much? Since you're already at Tier 5 of the divine level and have the sudden inspiration ability, you should know my choice." Fong Xingjian said coldly, "Today, right now, I'm going to kill him immediately. If you want to stop me, then do so. What's with all this crap?" With that, the celestial eradication sword formation was unleashed to an extreme. The white bone short sword in Fong Xingjian's hand brought along a myriad of sword shadows and slashed out toward Jacob with endless power. "Since you've distorted space and isolated him from the outside, then I'll use absolute power to destroy the distorted structure and kill you again." It was as if the bedsheet had been folded up to cover the mattress, and Fong Xingjian wanted to use violence to lift the bedsheet and stab the mattress to death. Chapter 649. With this single move, the celestial eradication sword formation was unleashed to its full power. Sword shadows came encompassing over, and each sword shadow could send a city flying. The seething spatial ripples caused light rays to distort and cover up the sky. The air was completely sucked dry, and the area within a range of 100 lis seemed to have turned into a cosmic vacuum. With a single move, the surroundings had turned into an environment that was like a cosmic vacuum. Even Alexander's countenance changed slightly at the sight of that astonishing power. Jacob looked at this scene in horror. Sensing that his marshal will have been seriously injured, he was still in disbelief. "How dare you? How dare you? The king is here, the royal family is on my side, and the entire empire is on my side. How dare you make a move before Alexander?" Jacob could not understand what Fong Xingjian was doing at all. Was he really not afraid of death? Alexander sighed inwardly. What a guy. To think that a real dragon has really been nurtured in a small pond. To think that a Tier 2 divine level expert would have such powerful powers. If it wasn't for the evil god summoning ritual, I'd really kill you on the spot. At the sight of this scene, Alexander also displayed his true powers. He struck out with an overturned hell, which similarly distorted space and sucked dry the air. The power was so violent that it was as if the world was trembling. Back then, compared to the first prince smashing the entire hell into the mortal world, the space in Alexander's palm was in a state of chaos. It was like the world's most evil and brutal power, wanting to turn the entire mortal world into hell. Kacha kacha kacha. The sword's shadows and palm shadows collided intensely. Fang Xingjian let out a stifled snort and retreated several hundred meters, disappearing into the spatial gaps. Alexander's palm trembled slightly, and he felt even more astonished. What a guy. This is over 70% of my powers. Seeing that Fang Xingjian had darted into the spatial gaps, Alexander's martial will turned into a black whirlwind and swept out. Fang Xingjian, you're really not bad. This is the first time I've seen such sword arts talent. However, in terms of actual cultivation, you're still too inexperienced. After saying that, he unleashed a palm strike, causing space to surge, and Fang Xingjian, who was inside the spatial rift, was jolted out. Next, Fang Xingjian's vision changed, and he found that the world before him had completely changed. The seawater beneath their feet and the tropical island were all gone. They had already turned into large areas of volcanoes, lava, mountains of knives, and seas of fire. The blue sky and white clouds in the sky were gone, replaced by endless volcanic ash. The air was filled with the smell of sulfur and magma, and there was no longer any trace of the seascape. Looking at this scene, Fang Xingjian let out a sigh of relief. God's kingdom. In the divine country, Tier 5 divine level experts could fold, distort, stretch, and compress space. At this stage, they could truly use these means to create a space that belonged to them. It could be a storage space or a small world like the Hades Vault. The space that was specifically used for combat was called the Divine Kingdom. The Divine Kingdom was a space condensed by a Tier 5 divine level expert for combat. It was usually very suitable for the user to unleash their powers, and it also possessed special spatial structures that could assist the cultivator in attacking. After being dragged into Alexander's divine kingdom, Fang Xingjian instantly lost his senses toward Jacob and Alexander. That's right. This is my divine kingdom, infernal hell. Alexander's voice rang out from all directions, accompanied by seething lightning, dark clouds, and volcanic ash. It was as if the demon lord of hell was bellowing. You don't have the means to grasp space like a Tier 5 divine level expert, so it's impossible for you to break out. Just stay here in peace. There's no need for you to act mysterious before me. I know the abilities of a Tier 5 divine level expert very well. It's just a divine kingdom and not a real small world, Fang Xingjian said calmly. You want me to stay here in peace? You better take a sword attack for me first. As he spoke, Fang Xingjian once again slashed out with his sword. Sword light flashed, cutting across the sky, and sword marks tore the world apart. The dark clouds in the sky were slashed apart, and the volcano under his feet was split into two. A hole that was several tens of kilometers long was torn open in the ground. The hole was so deep that the bottom could not be seen, and one could only see the shadows of scorching lava in its depths. However, Fang Xingjian frowned slightly. It was because he had not planned on attacking such a large area. However, when he slashed out with his sword, he discovered that his powers were instantly dispersed by the other party's spatial structures. It was as if the water in the pipes had flowed into the sewers. This sword attack seemed to have a great impact, but its prowess was dispersed. It was not as condensed as Fang Xingjian had expected. This was the Divine Kingdom. By condensing all sorts of complicated spatial structures, Fang Xingjian's attacks were dispersed, but Alexander was not affected at all. Moreover, the lava in the volcanoes below seemed to have a special pattern as well. It was probably another powerful formation. Fang Xingjian let out a cold snort and slashed out a few more times with his sword. Ripples in the space kept on fluctuating. He was not trying to destroy the environment. Instead, he was trying to destroy the spatial structures in the infernal hell. Sword shadows danced in the sky, expanding rapidly like a tempest. Wherever they passed by, they would flatten the space with violent powers, allowing Fang Xingjian to unleash his powers freely. Just as he was continuing to expand his territory in the infernal hell before him suddenly shattered and disappeared. Feng Xingjian had once again returned to the island. However, Jacob and the Emperor were nowhere to be seen on the island. All that was left was Emperor Alexander's faint voice ringing in Feng Xingjian's ears. It was like a decree from a god high up in the heavens. Feng Xingjian, I've already sent Jacob away. The Panwu heavenly raiment will be given to him as compensation. Don't look for trouble with him anymore, and don't create any more trouble. You know that I have sudden inspiration. No matter who you want to kill indiscriminately, I'll come and stop you. Collect your thoughts. Come to the imperial capital in a few days' time to receive your commendation and prepare to accept your new position. Remember, the reason why I've spared your life is because I want to make use of you. However, whether or not you'll be able to continue living after I'm done using you will depend on your performance. Don't make a mistake and waste your talent. Hearing Alexander's words, a cold gleam shot out from Feng Xingjian's eyes. He let out a cold snort and sighed inwardly. The prowess of the 4 white bone-short swords in the celestial eradication sword formation is still insufficient. Otherwise, even if I were to be dragged into the divine country, I'd be able to slash out with a single sword attack immediately. Hearing the Emperor's warning, Feng Xingjian did not plan on abiding by it at all. He would head to the imperial capital, but that would be after he killed the Holy Light clan's head, Jacob, and snatched back the Panwu heavenly raiment. However, in order to kill the other party, he would have to break through Alexander's protection. Right now, if he wished to improve his strength once again, he would either have to strive for the 3rd tier of the divine level or increase the prowess of the celestial eradication sword formation. At the 3rd tier of the divine level, he would have to forge his physical body and then allow it to merge perfectly with his martial will. Only then would he be able to strive for the 3rd tier of the divine level. This was not something that could be done immediately. In order for the prowess of the celestial eradication sword formation to increase once again, he would need to increase his sword arts cultivation or obtain a longsword that was a divine remains equipment. At the thought of this, Feng Xingjian's eyes gleamed. With his sudden inspiration, he had a plan. Wang Xiaoyan, Feng Qian, and the others should have already forged divine remains equipment. If I have a divine level longsword, I'll be able to unleash more of the prowess of the celestial eradication sword formation. I'll be able to break through Alexander's protection and kill Jacob completely. At the next moment, Feng Xingjian's figure suddenly shattered, and he flew to the sky above the great western city at light speed. Then his physical body reassembled. Chapter 650. At the 2nd tier of the divine level, one would shatter their physical body, roam the world with their martial will, and then reassemble their physical body. This would be equivalent to moving at akin to light speed, and the time spent was mainly in the process of shattering and reassembling the physical body. The time taken to transmit the martial will at light speed was almost negligible. However, everything had its advantages and disadvantages, and it was the same for the 2nd tier of the divine level to move at akin to light speed. Although such a movement was fast, allowing one to reach almost any place in the world instantly, one would not be able to react during the journey. The transmission speed of martial will was too fast, and even divine-level experts would not be able to react when faced with such means that were equivalent to teleportation on the world scale. This meant that in the process of moving at akin to light speed, one would basically not know what they had encountered along the way. This meant that it would be very difficult to use this speed to search for things along the way. One would basically have to know the general direction before heading to a place. Feng Xingjian arrived at the great western city instantly. Looking at the people coming and going, as well as the commoners who knew nothing about the various divine-level experts' movements, Feng Xingjian let out a soft sigh. There were countless people in the massive city, but their lives and deaths could be determined by a single thought of a divine-level expert. Alexander's appearance set off alarm bells for Feng Xingjian. If the people in power who had powerful legacies and endless resources were talented enough and had attained the divine level for a long enough period of time, then after the world's metamorphosis and the appearance of the 9-tiered heavens, the speed at which their abilities increased would be extremely fast. For example, the 8-directional Crimson Dragon's Undying Xia had charged up to level 2 after the world's metamorphosis. The Full Moon Shrine's blue sacred moonlight had reached the pinnacle of level 2, and the Myriad Stars Palace's astral ancestor had even attempted to strive for Tier 3 of the divine level, albeit failing. The thing that surprised Feng Xingjian the most was that the Empire's Emperor Alexander had advanced to Tier 5 of the divine level. This showed how great his accumulation, talent, and resources were. However, it was said that in ancient times, there were experts at Tier 1 of the divine level who had trained for several decades. After the world's metamorphosis, they had cleared several tiers of the 9-tiered heavens within a single night and had advanced to Tier 6 or even Tier 7 of the divine level. For example, the legendary Divine Sun Emperor's master, the Supreme Flame's Sacred King, had killed 99 divine-level ferocious beasts after attaining the divine level. He then used their bodies as materials to train in seclusion for 90 years. When he came out of seclusion on the first night after the world's metamorphosis, he cleared all 8 tiers of the 9-tiered heavens and reached the legendary Tier 9 of the divine level. He was invincible in the world overnight. In comparison, Alexander's situation wasn't that exaggerated. However, Alexander was already at Tier 5 of the divine level, and even he was unable to kill him. He could only go up against Alexander and had even condensed a divine country. If that were the case, the Mage Association and the Holy See of Truth would only become even more terrifying. Fortunately, he was immune to black magic and had a great advantage against the Mage Association. However, he still needed to become more powerful. The next moment, he flashed again and appeared in Wang Xiaoyan and Feng Qian's studio. Seeing Feng Xingjian's sudden appearance, Wang Xiaoyan asked in surprise, "What's the matter, Xingjian? Why did you suddenly come over?" However, Feng Qian smiled and said, "You finally remembered to come over? Are you here to see the divine weapon? We've already forged it for you." As she said that, she moved to the side and looked toward the center of the studio. A platinum-colored longsword was stabbed into a square crystal platform. At the instant he saw this longsword, Feng Xingjian felt an unprecedented sharpness. He even had a feeling as if a blade was slashing past his face. Almost at the instant he saw this sword, Feng Xingjian's eyes lit up. Good sword. This was a long sword that was entirely platinum-colored. It was slender and long, and the sword hilt and blade were connected as one. There were no protrusions in the longsword. The longsword continued to emit faint electric light, and it looked just like a bolt of lightning. "Of course it's a good sword," Wang Xiaoyan said. Wang Xiaoyan said, "We've spent several months, expended countless materials, and put in a lot of effort to forge this divine remains equipment longsword. It contains countless secret arts of our mountainous sea dynasty. Even if you were to give these materials to someone else, they might not be able to succeed, even if they were given 10 times the time." Feng Xingjian reached out and picked up the platinum-colored longsword. Almost at the instant he held the longsword, an intense, piercing sensation came from the longsword. It was as if countless electric snakes were spreading into his body. As the electric currents spread out, he felt that wherever this gush of power passed by, his physical body would only have the illusion that it was about to collapse. Wang Xiaoyan said proudly, "This sword is called the Thunder Calamity. It can convert any power channeled into its body into the will of heavenly thunder. This will of heavenly thunder has an extremely strong destructive force against heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces. As long as there's enough power, it can cut through almost any physical substance." Feng Qian, who was standing behind Wang Xiaoyan, added, "It's basically similar to the interference of electromagnetic forces. The heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces in Miracle World are similar to the electromagnetic forces in our world. They are the foundation that all things in the world are formed from. Without the heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces, there's no way for them to form physical substances. The Thunder Calamity is able to absorb power and convert it into some kind of heavenly thunder will. interfering with the basic structure of physical substances, and thus being able to cut through almost any physical substance. Feng Qian then smiled. This was also the idea that you suggested back then. You hoped that the weapon we created would be as sharp as possible. It would be best if it could reach the level of being able to cut through all living things and affect electromagnetic forces. Thankfully, we managed to achieve this by relying on materials worth 10 million gold and the remains of divine-level experts. Thinking of the materials she had spent 10 million gold on, Feng Qian could not help but click her tongue. If the same value were to be converted to Earth, it would be equivalent to several trillion gold. It would be enough to change the world in any country and create a new atmosphere. However, all of it had been used on this weapon. Hearing Feng Qian's and Wang Xiaoyan's explanations, the gleam in Feng Xinjian's eyes grew even brighter. He sensed a familiar aura from this sword. This was a feeling similar to the all-conquering sword. Although this Thunder Calamity was also only at level 31, it was very suitable for Feng Xinjian. All right, this Thunder Calamity could be used to bear the weight of my all-conquering sword and truly strengthen the prowess of the Celestial Eradication Sword Formation. At the thought of this, Feng Xinjian exerted force in his hand, which was holding onto the sword. Waves of sword intense that represented the all-conquering sword, one of the 4 Celestial Eradication Swords, gushed into the sword. After being converted by the Thunder Calamity, they turned into waves of heavenly thunder will. Streams of thunderbolts swam about in the Thunder Calamity, and the heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces throughout Feng Xinjian's body felt as if they were about to collapse. At this moment, Feng Xinjian suddenly had a realization. My infiltrating void sword is compatible with astral forces and gravity. My all-conquering sword is compatible with the heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces and electromagnetic forces. The Celestial Eradication Sword Formation can become even stronger. Chapter 651. One day later, Feng Xinjian floated in the sky above the Great Western region. Electricity circled around his body, and then they gradually dissipated. In front of him, the lightning tribulation was floating and sinking, and he could no longer feel any sharpness from it. After spending 1 day and 1 night, I've finally channeled the power of the all-conquering sword's sword intent and the Celestial Eradication Sword Formation into the Thunder Calamity. Looking at the divine sword before him, Feng Xinjian revealed a smile. In the next moment, 3 white lights flashed in front of his chest, and 3 white bone-short swords appeared. Now that I've activated the Celestial Eradication Sword Formation, with the Thunder Tribulation as the core, the power that I've extracted from the surrounding 100,000 meters has increased by more than 2 times. The 3 white bone-short swords were like 3 satellites orbiting around the Thunder Tribulation. Violent and turbulent powers reverberated and transmitted between them. At the same time, the entire Thunder Tribulation had turned pitch black. Everything that passed by it, including light, was sliced apart, causing the place where it was located to become pitch black. Simultaneously, among the 3 white bone-short swords, the short sword that represented the infiltrating void had hints of light spots on its body. It was the concept of the astral forces that had been integrated into the Universal Astral Realm book. Of the 4 Celestial Eradication Swords, Infiltrating Void, Light Pursuit, All-Conquering, and Instant, Feng Xinjian had used Infiltrating Void to represent gravity and had also drawn in the Myriad Stars Palace's astral path. The All-Conquering represented the electromagnetic force, and the Thunder Tribulation Divine sword carried it. If Feng Xinjian were to be able to represent the Light Pursuit and Instant as well, and if he were to find divine swords to bear the weight of Infiltrating Void, Light Pursuit, and Instant, then the prowess of the Celestial Eradication Sword Formation would increase by leaps and bounds. However, after obtaining the Lightning Tribulation, Feng Xinjian's strength had increased tremendously once again. It's a pity that the smelting and modification of the Hell's white bone armor is too difficult. Otherwise, with another divine sword, my strength would be able to improve even more. However, Fang Xingjian also knew that such things could not be rushed. Right now, it was already very hard for Fang Qian and Wang Xiaoyan to be able to create the Thunder Tribulation so quickly. No matter how much he urged them, it would be useless. Something like a divine sword was something that could only be chanced upon. He could only rely on Wang Xiaoyan and Fang Qian to modify it. What Fang Xingjian could truly control from now on was still to strive for the third tier of the divine level. However, this would require him to reforge his physical body and for his martial will and physical body to reach a 100% level where he could freely switch between them. Only then would he be able to attempt to strive for the third tier of the divine level. He would still need some time to accumulate his strength in this aspect. The Myriad Stars Palace's body tempering arts and the Mystic Abyss Vault's body tempering arts are both not bad. However, if I were to find the 6 great clans, I'll be able to collect a batch of body tempering arts for Tier 2 of the Divine Realm, allowing my foundation to become even stronger. Just then, a graceful figure flew up. It was Audrey, the #1 beauty in the Northern Ice region, whom even Xia wanted to snatch. Audrey put on a purple cloak and flew up. The cloak exuded a faint power. Clearly, it was a flying tool. Looking at Audrey, Fang Xingjian asked, "What's the matter?" Audrey stuck out her tongue, feeling a little embarrassed. A hint of redness flashed on her fair and tender face as she said, "Xingjian, you've already left a stream of sword intent in my body. If anything were to happen, you'd be able to sense it at any time. Then can I go out? It's so boring staying in the academy all day." Go out? Fang Xingjian was stunned. He had never felt that staying in the academy was boring. If it was not because this world was a world of competition and there were things that needed to be done everywhere, he would be very satisfied just staying in the academy and cultivating every day. However, Audrey was not a cultivation maniac like him after all. Instead, she was a young lady who was like a flower, and it was very normal for her to like going out to play. Moreover, Fang Xingjian had sudden inspiration and the ability to move at akin to light speed as a second-tier divine level expert. Therefore, he was not afraid that Audrey would encounter danger. Seeing Fang Xingjian nod, Audrey spun around excitedly. She grinned as she hugged onto Fang Xingjian's arm and said coquettishly once again, "Then can I return to the Northern Ice region?" Regardless of whether it was the Great Western region or the Northern Ice region, Fang Xingjian would be able to arrive in the blink of an eye if he moved at akin to light speed. Therefore, after seeing Fang Xingjian nod once again, Audrey let out a cheer. She was like a sparrow that had dashed out of its cage. She even hugged Fang Xingjian and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Then she looked at Fang Xingjian excitedly and said, "Oh, right. Do you want to come with me to the Northern Ice region to play?" Fang Xingjian shook his head. "All right, you can go back first. I have some things to do as well." After sending Audrey away, the memories in Fang Xingjian's mind started to seethe. Holy Light Clan Jacob? I remember that the old man I killed previously was also from one of the 8 great founding clans, right? The 8 great founding clans were clans that had been founded by the 8 divine level experts who had founded the country. Other than the current empire's royal family, there were also the Tianmin clan that he had encountered in the Full Moon Shrine and the Hades Vault, as well as the Holy Light clan and the other 5 clans that he had encountered in the fight for the Panwu Heavenly Raiment. That Tianmin clan. I remember that they have already surrendered. I should be able to find out where the Holy Light clan is from them. After obtaining the Thunder Calamity, the Celestial Eradication Sword Formation had been upgraded once again. This time around, Fang Xingjian's abilities had increased tremendously, and he would naturally not let Jacob off. This time around, even if Alexander were to come and stop him, Fang Xingjian was confident that he would be able to kill Jacob with a single sword attack. Jacob and Alexander would never have expected that Fang Xingjian would be able to increase tremendously in just one day and come looking for them once again. With a flash, Fang Xingjian appeared in the Eastern Sand region. At the next moment, his body cut across the sky like a supersonic plane, incessantly sweeping through the desert in the Eastern Sand region. Fang Xingjian slowly went through his memories in his mind. I I remember that the enraged lion and that clan head that the full moon shrine killed are from the Tianmen clan. They did mention their location. 5 minutes later, Fang Xingjian arrived in an oasis. Seeing how busy and prosperous the place was, he was slightly surprised. Although the Tianmen clan is built in the desert, they are self-sufficient. They also have a tremendous amount of wealth and population. They are really thriving. At the next moment, with a flash, he flew toward the center of the Tianmen clan and arrived in a huge conference room. Simultaneously, at the Tianmen clan's conference table, a white-haired old man scolded furiously. "Shan He, what on earth are you hesitating for? The 6 great clans have already merged into one, helping each other and forming an alliance. Lord Jacob and the others have all attained the divine level. There are a total of 6 divine level experts and the several centuries of legacies of the 6 great clans. It's time for us to join them." Another old man said, "That's right. That Fang Xingjian killed our clansman and our clan head. How can we submit to him? Joining the alliance of the 6 great clans now is the best opportunity. With Lord Jacob backing us, there's no need for us to worry about that Fang Xingjian anymore." A middle-aged man stood up and scolded, "No matter how amazing that Fang Xingjian is, he's still just a human, a young man. Right now, Lord Jacob and the others have accumulated a lot of resources and have 6 great experts. If we don't join them, are we going to risk our lives for that kid Fang Xingjian? He killed your elder brother, your father, and your grandfather. Do you really not want to seek revenge?" Opposite them, under the protection of a few other elders, a skinny and weak-looking young lady said calmly, "Elders, I understand how you guys are feeling. However, you weren't at the full moon shrine that day. If you hadn't seen how terrifying Fang Xingjian is, you wouldn't be able to understand it. We've already agreed to submit to him. If we're to go back on our word and join the Holy Light Clan's side, we'll probably be facing annihilation immediately." Chapter 652. The skinny young lady who spoke was the daughter of the Tianmen clan's head, Shan He. Fang Xingjian remembered seeing this girl at the full moon shrine previously. She had been hiding behind the many elders of the Tianmen clan. Back when he had killed the enraged lion and the Tianmen clan's head, this lady had not shown any anger, grief, or sadness. He had thought that this girl did not have a close relationship with the Tianmen clan's head. However, it seemed that she was a shrewd woman. However, the other elders present were very dissatisfied with Shan He's reply. This was especially so for the white-haired old man who was leading the opposition. He shouted, "Shan He, you're really treacherous. Fang Xingjian killed your elder brother, father, and grandfather. To think that you're not thinking of seeking revenge? Right now, the 6 clan heads have attained the divine level, and this is a rare opportunity. Yet, instead of seeking revenge, you want to submit to Fang Xingjian. I want to acknowledge you as our Tianmen clan's head." Elder Obai, a middle-aged man in black clothes, standing next to Shan, he said furiously, "The young clan head is doing this for the sake of the Tianmen clan. Forgive me for being blunt, but with the abilities that Fang Xingjian displayed at the full moon shrine, he might not be able to kill the 6 clan heads head-on. However, it's an easy feat for him to seek revenge on us. It's really unwise to offend Fang Xingjian for this." Elder Obai let out a cold snort and said, "After our 7 great clans join forces, we'll collectively move to the Holy Light Fortress in the depths of the Northern Ice region. There's the Holy Light Clan's great protective formation there. You guys should understand the Holy Light Clan's research in formations. The Evil Spirit sect has merely gotten a little bit of their research, yet they've already turned the entire Northern Ice region upside down back then. If we hide in their great protective formation, even if Fang Xingjian were to come personally, he won't be able to hurt us." Hearing Elder Obai's words, the few elders who had initially supported Shan, he also hesitated. It was true that Fang Xingjian was terrifying, but if they could hide in the Holy Light Clan's great formation and avoid Fang Xingjian, that would be great. Shan He said coldly, "The Holy Light Clan wants to swallow up the other 6 great clans. If we go, there probably won't be a Tianmen clan in the future." Elder Obai laughed out loud and said, the 6 clan leaders have achieved the deity level, and they've shared their divine arts with each other. This is already a great achievement, and their divine might is astonishing. The Holy Light clan's number 1 in this generation, by D, was even more talented and could be said to be a monster. It was said that he had already stepped into the divine level before the age of 30. Now, the 6 clan leaders all thought highly of him and passed down their techniques to him. After going into seclusion, they even handed over all the management of the 6 clans to him. Now, Emperor Bai has already contacted the leaders of the 6 great clans. There will be a meeting in 3 days, and from then on, the 7 great clans will help each other and form an alliance. White Emperor, I've heard of him. It's said that he's the strongest among the younger generation of the 6 great clans. Lord Jacob once praised him, saying that he is a genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. It's said that the other patriarchs have taken him in as their godson. He has always been the leader of the younger generation of the 6 great families. The 6 clan leaders have been in seclusion all year round, comprehending their divine arts. In the future, Bai Di will probably be the one taking over the various great clans. Thinking of how the 6 great clans, together with the Tianmen clan, would be a tremendous force if the 7 great clans were to join forces, they would be able to shake up the entire empire. Hearing Elder Bai's words, the other elders were not the only ones who were whispering to each other. Even Shan He frowned, her eyes filled with worry. Fang Xingjian, who was hiding in the spatial gaps, listened and roughly understood the situation. The news of him killing 5 of the 6 clan leaders and shattering Jacob's physical body had probably not reached these few great clans yet. Thinking about it, how could Jacob have had the time to spread the news within a single day? Moreover, this news could not be spread out easily. Otherwise, if the news of 5 of the 6 clan leaders dying and 1 injured were to be leaked, it would immediately cause a huge uproar. It was unknown how much trouble would be caused. The 6 clan leaders had been preparing the formation for the gates of heaven all year round, cultivating in seclusion on the small island and exchanging their divine arts. It seemed as if they had handed everything to a young man by the name of Bai Di. This person was the most outstanding person among the younger generation of the few great clans. He also had the ambition to join forces with the 7 great clans, lead countless experts, and stir up a storm in the world. Fang Xingjian gave it some thought and released his sword fingers, sending a stream of consciousness into Shan He's mind. Don't argue with him. Shan He was slightly surprised and thought, who's speaking? I'm Fang Xingjian. I'm looking for someone from the Holy Light clan. If you agree to form an alliance with him, I'll accompany you to the banquet 3 days later. Hearing the words Fang Xingjian, a hint of complicated emotions flashed in Shan He's eyes. She nodded slightly, indicating that she understood. Looking at Bai, who was still giving a long speech, Shan He waved her hand and said, "All right, I got it. I agree to join the alliance. 3 days later, I'll personally make a trip to the Northern Ice region." Oh, Elder Bai was stunned for a moment, but he immediately reacted and spoke in the tone of a senior. Good. It's good that you can understand the big picture, Shan He. Now that the world has undergone a metamorphosis and the 7th onslaught is about to arrive, it's the time for our 7 great clans to join forces and achieve great things. That person from the Holy Light clan has great talent and is extremely talented. When the time comes, you must have a good chat with him. With that, he even smiled ambiguously at Shan He. With the death of the clan head, it's still too hard for the young clan head to support the clan as a girl. Bai Di is a rare talent from our 7 great clans. Young clan head, why don't you get closer to him? Hearing Elder Bai's words, how could Shan He not understand what he meant? Not only did he want the Tianmen clan to join, but he also wanted her to hook up with Bai Di. Thinking of this, a hint of killing intent flashed in Shan He's eyes. However, Elder Bai did not care about Shan He's feelings at all. He laughed out loud and then left. The envoy from the Holy Light clan is still waiting for news from me. I'll go tell him the good news right away. Looking at the proud smile on Elder Bai's face as he left, it was clear that he was making use of the Holy Light clan's influence to flaunt his prowess. Thinking of this, Shanhe clenched her fists even tighter. That old fogey really deserves to be killed. Fang Xingjian did not say anything. With a slight movement of his body, he followed Obai out. Obai arrived at the courtyard he was staying in and flipped open a mirror. As water ripples flashed in the mirror, a middle-aged man dressed in white appeared in it. When Elder Obai saw this middle-aged man, he bowed humbly and said, "Thankfully, I didn't let you down and didn't let Lord Baidi down. Shanhe has already agreed to the alliance and will head to the Northern Ice region in 3 days' time." "All right." That middle-aged man in white nodded and said, "3 days later, head to the Divine Sword Peak at the northernmost point of the Northern Ice region. There be someone to receive you." Fang Xingjian frowned. He had not expected that the other party would be contacting him remotely. Moreover, even at this point in time, the other party was still unwilling to reveal the Holy Light clan's true location. These great clans that had existed for several centuries were really cautious. However, he did not mind waiting for 3 days at most. Moreover, the 7 great clans would be gathered in 3 days' time. It would be convenient for him to wipe them out in one go. Chapter 653. Elder Obai smiled and nodded. Then he said hesitantly, "Then the thing that Lord Baidi promised me." "Don't worry," the white-clothed middle-aged man said coldly. "What kind of character is Lord Baidi? Amongst the younger generation in the world, there's no one who can compare to him. He's destined to dominate the world, an existence who can stir up a storm in the world. How can he be greedy for that little thing of yours? Just wait patiently." Elder Obai smiled and nodded, eventually turning off the mirror. That rascal Shan, he finally understands the big picture. With the 6 great clans joining forces, probably only the royal family in the entire empire will be able to fend them off. What can that mere Fang Xingjian amount to? Thinking of this, Elder Obai smiled even more happily. Fang Xingjian did not say anything and left with a flash. He was not willing to alert the enemy. After all, he would just have to deal with them 3 days later. With a flash, he appeared in the garden. Shanhe seemed to have long known that he would come. She stood there alone and had already dismissed her servants. Seeing Fang Xingjian's sudden appearance, her countenance changed slightly. However, she did not reveal any anger or anxiety, displaying her shrewdness. She merely asked, "Fang Xingjian, what are your plans this time around? Are you going to wage war against the 6 great clans?" Fang Xingjian asked calmly, "Can I?" Shanhe frowned and said, "The heads of the 6 great clans have all attained the divine level. There are a total of 6 divine level experts, and each of them has several centuries of legacies from their respective clans. They have countless divine weapons, secret arts, and trump cards. Even if you were to deal with them, you wouldn't have the confidence to win, right? I don't wish to bring the Tianmin clan into a desperate situation." Although she had not been willing to betray Fang Xingjian, she had not been willing to help Fang Xingjian take the initiative to deal with the 6 great clans either. In her opinion, it would be for the best if the 2 of them did not interfere with each other. Otherwise, if they were to fight, both sides would probably suffer great losses. The Tianmin clan would suffer great losses, and they might even end up as cannon fodder. Although Fang Xingjian was powerful, Shanhe also understood that the accumulation of the 6 great clans was not to be underestimated. This was especially the case when the 6 clan heads shared their great arts and went into seclusion together. Their improvement in martial arts would probably far surpass the imagination of ordinary people. As the leader of an aristocratic family, she had never doubted the strength of an aristocratic family. However, Fang Xingjian said calmly, "One day ago, I met Jacob and the other 5 clan heads in the Southern Sea." Hearing Fang Xingjian's words, Shanhe's pupils contracted slightly. Then Fang Xingjian continued calmly, "They set up the gates of heaven formation and besieged me. In the end, I killed the heads of the Night Massacre, Illusory Clan, Dark Shadow Clan, Berserk Dragon Clan, and Thunder King Clan. I also crushed the body of the Holy Light Clan's head, Jacob, and seriously injured his will." "Impossible!" Shanhe cried out in astonishment. You're saying that you single-handedly killed the 5 clan heads with a single sword and dealt Jacob with severe injuries? How is this possible? All of them were divine-level experts. Moreover, the formation of the Gates of Heaven was the Holy Light clan's signature formation. The Gates of Heaven was also a divine equipment that had been passed down for several centuries. With it as the center, the formation could absorb the power of sunlight within a range of several hundred leagues. Coupled with the reinforcement from 6 divine-level experts, this prowess is simply world-shaking. How could they have been killed by you with a single sword attack? Shani found it hard to believe what Feng Xingjian had said. Even though she knew that it was unlikely that Feng Xingjian would lie to her, she still found it hard to believe. Feng Xingjian was not even 20 years old and had cultivated for less than 2 years. To think that he had single-handedly killed 5 divine-level experts and dealt serious injuries to the Holy Light clan's head, Jacob. Such a thing was far too astonishing and had surpassed her imagination. Feng Xingjian ignored her doubts and continued. However, when I was about to kill Jacob, Alexander came out to stop me, allowing that old asterisk star to escape. This time around, the reason why I want you to bring me to the Holy Light clan is to force Jacob out and kill him. Hiss. The words Alexander seemed to have a terrifying magical power. When Shani heard this name, she could not help but draw in a cold gasp. You said that Alexander stopped you? Are you talking about Alexander Krieg? Who else could it be? Feng Xingjian said coldly. If it wasn't for him, Jacob would have been killed by me. At the next moment, just as Shani was about to say something, Feng Xingjian tapped out with a finger, sending the scenes of him killing the 5 clan heads, dealing serious injuries to Jacob, and fighting against Alexander into Shani's mind. As the images were transmitted, Shani's eyes were wide open like light bulbs. She looked at Feng Xingjian as if she was looking at a monster. Feng Xingjian shook his finger at Shani and said calmly, "In any case, I'll be going to the Holy Light clan with you 3 days later. You just have to cooperate well and don't get any ideas. Otherwise, after I crush the 6 great clans, I won't mind wiping out your Tianmen clan." In this instant, Shani felt extremely thankful for her choice. In the snowy mountains that were extremely far away in the northern ice region, in the depths of the many layers of snowy mountains, a mountain peak pierced through the cloud layers, piercing straight into the sky. At the peak of the mountain, a man dressed in white stood proudly like a god who had descended from the heavens, looking down at the mountains and the earth under his feet. Behind him, a lady of great beauty sat quietly at the stone table. Her hands moved incessantly as she brewed tea. Her movements were practiced and graceful, and as she did so, waves of fragrance were emitted from the teapot. She took a sniff of the tea, smiled, and said, "This is a new tea sent by Meng Lang from the Illusory clan. It's called coconut fruit tea. The taste isn't bad." Coconut fruit? This name is quite special. Bai Di turned and looked at that lady of great beauty with a gentle gaze. He then walked to the stone bench and sat down. "Let me have a taste." After tasting it, he laughed and said, "Linger, your tea brewing skills are getting better and better." Just then, the middle-aged man dressed in white walked up, looking at Bai Di with great respect and admiration. This young man before him had grown up over the past 10 years and had completely established his prestige among the 6 great clans. He had also allowed the Holy Light clan to become the leader of many clans, and their influence in the dark reached several great regions. The wealth and influence they had hidden were all extremely great. With just a single order from him, he would be able to shake up the world, and with a single word, blood would flow like a river. This was especially so for the past 3 years, when the 6 clan heads had been training in seclusion for an increasingly long period of time. Bai Di's words were even more effective than the clan heads. The middle-aged man firmly believed that under Bai Di's lead, the 6 great clans, no, the 7 great clans would definitely develop to an unprecedented level. They might even be able to replace the Krieg royal family. The middle-aged man half knelt and said, "Sir, there's news from the Tianmen clan that he has agreed to the alliance. I've made an appointment with him to wait at the Divine Sword Peak." When the time comes, they'll be teleported to the manor through a formation. Dee waved his hand and said, Uncleing, how many times have I said this? Don't kneel before me. Sir, etiquette can't be neglected. 3 days later, you'll be the leader of the 7 great clans. With the 6 old ancestors by your side and the potential influence of the 7 great clans spread across the world, even the Krieg royal family will have to show some respect to you. Moreover, my life was saved by you. So what if I kneel? Chapter 654. Dee shook his head. I was originally only willing to be an unaffiliated person in the mountains and have no intention of fighting for the position of leader. However, with the world in turmoil, there's a need for someone to step forward and save the people from their predicament. However, there are many mediocre people in the world. The Krieg royal family is selfish by nature, imposing taxes and collecting exorbitant taxes. The Holy See of Truth has endless internal strife, and none of them are far-sighted. The Magic Association is inhumane and not a blessing to the world. As for the other mediocre people, they're not worth mentioning at all. Once the calamity arrives, all of them will probably turn into dust. That beautiful lady said, Dongfang Ling's talent is outstanding, and he's probably about to attain the divine level. Can't he? Dee shook his head. He's a martial arts fanatic. It's hard to nurture him, and his future is limited. The beautiful lady asked again. That Fang Xingjian killed Xia, defeated the blue sacred moonlight, crippled the first prince, and reached the 2nd tier of the divine level at such a young age. Can he be considered a hero? He's militaristic, making enemies everywhere, and has no foundation at all. He seems to be very impressive, but he's actually on the verge of collapse. The beautiful lady asked curiously, what about the first prince? Amongst the younger generation, he's the first to attain the divine level. Although he's been crippled by Fang Xingjian, it's said that he's even more unfathomable. He cultivates diligently every day and hasn't become dispirited despite falling from the clouds. His state of mind is truly terrifying. With the world's metamorphosis, the strength of the experts in the world has increased at a rapid rate. George has lost, and he has fallen behind. There's no way to cover up this fatal flaw. From the moment he was crippled by Fang Xingjian, he had already been eliminated. Dee shook his head and sighed. Since that's the case, I can only take on the responsibility. The middle-aged man said, Sir, you are righteous. All the lives in the world depend on you. The beautiful lady at the side looked at Dee with even more splendor in her eyes. She sighed in her heart. 3 days later would probably be a day that would change history. To be able to witness the rise of such a legend in history was truly her life's fortune. The middle-aged man asked, I wonder when the 6 old ancestors will return. This time around, the alliance between the 7 great clans is so great that it can engulf the world. Master, foster father, and the others will definitely return, Dee said. If it's fast, it'll be today. If it's slow, it'll be 3 days later. Foster father and the others will definitely return. At the same time, in another unknown underground cave, the Night Massacre clan's head suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were still emitting the pain of death. He suddenly woke up and said in a daze, I'm still alive. Raising his head, he discovered that Jacob, Illusory Clan, Mad Dragon Clan, Thunder King Clan, and Dark Shadow Clan leaders were all smiling at him. You two asked in a daze, we're all dead. He died, but he came back to life. You can say that he's still dead. The head of the Illusory Clan said, we were killed by Fang Xingjian. However, Alexander used his unrivaled abilities to retrieve our personal information in the ether particles and reconstructed our wills. The head of the Dark Shadow Clan added, thereafter, the Black Mage King personally performed level 12 black magic to reconstruct our bodies and reconstruct our physical bodies. The 2 experts used their secret techniques at the same time, but this could not be considered as resurrection. Instead, they created another batch of people with the memories of the 5 clan leaders. However, Whether or not the new batch of 5 clan leaders with the same memories would still be the original clan leaders was a philosophical question. No one present cared about it. Hearing that the Black Mage King and Alexander had performed their secret techniques together, the head of the Night Massacre clan said in astonishment, "They've joined forces?" "They haven't really joined forces," Jacob said with a cold smile. Jacob sneered and said, "These 2 top-notch experts have formed an alliance for the evil god summoning ritual, but it's just a facade of unity. They want to control our 6 great clans, but we can make use of this opportunity to benefit from both sides and reap all the benefits. This time around, they've depleted a lot of energy to reconstruct your wills and physical bodies. This has benefited us." As he said this, he took out the Panwu heavenly raiment on his back. The Panwu heavenly raiment had regained its luster, and the power it contained seemed to be even stronger than before, flashing with colorful lights. However, the divine armors was nowhere to be seen, making the Panwu heavenly raiment usable. Jacob said fervently, "This Panwu heavenly raiment has been restored by the Gold Mage King, and the will within it has been killed. It's even more powerful than before. However, this power is too strong, and it's impossible for a single person to control it. They thought that there would be a rift between us because of this divine armor, but they don't know that our 6 great clans are helping each other. The rapport we have isn't something they can imagine." The head of the Fervent Dragon clan also grinned. "It just so happens that they've sent us this Panwu heavenly raiment. The 6 of us can refine it together and get stronger." Although this Panwu heavenly raiment was still not comparable to the Hell's white bone armor, it was still something that the Mountainous Sea dynasty had put in a lot of effort to create. The power it contained was not to be underestimated, and it had already made up for and even surpassed the losses they had suffered from the gates of heaven. The head of the Illusory clan then said, "These aren't the only benefits. The Black Mage King used black magic to help us reconstruct our physical bodies, allowing us to secretly comprehend the profoundness of black magic and help us forge our conjured physiques. Do they think that we don't know? The diabolic energy is extremely powerful and boundless, but it's the best target to imitate when condensing one's martial will. As long as we can comprehend a hint or two of the profoundness from this black magic, we'll have a greater chance of striving for the 2nd tier of the divine level." Jacob smiled. All right. Since that's the case, we'll go into seclusion for 3 days. We'll first refine this Panwu heavenly raiment and completely stimulate its powers. We'll then properly comprehend the profoundness of black magic. 3 days later, we'll head back to participate in the alliance that Baidi organized. After we've completely digested these resources, we'll join forces to annihilate that guy, Fang Xingjian. That's right. I won't be able to rest easy if I don't annihilate that thief." As Jacob said this, he grabbed toward the Panwu heavenly raiment's helmet. The Panwu heavenly raiment's power is overwhelming, and we won't be able to control it individually. Let's split the positions evenly and control the powers of different parts. We'll then combine them into one and completely unleash the prowess of the Panwu heavenly raiment. I'll form the head. With a grab, he grabbed the Panwu heavenly raiment's helmet in his hand. I'll form the torso. I'll form the arms. I'll form the right leg. I'll form the left leg. 3 days later, outside the Tianmen clan's door, Obai looked at Shan He with some puzzlement. His gaze swept toward the young man next to her, and he asked, "Young clan head, this time around, it's the alliance of the 7 great clans. This matter is of great importance, so it's better that we don't bring people who are unrelated with us." Shani frowned and said, "This is a friend that I've gotten to know through life and death when I went out to train. With him around, I'll be at ease." Elder Obai looked at the slightly deformed Fang Xingjian and smiled coldly. "Young man, this is the gathering of our 7 great clans. Outsiders will be asking for trouble if they go in." Chapter 655. Fang Xingjian did not say anything. Since when had he paid any attention to a character like Elder Obai? Fang Xingjian merely lifted his head and threw a glance at Obai. With a sweep of his martial will, Elder Obai's entire body stiffened, and his mind went blank. Fong Xingjian then threw a glance at Shan He and said, "Let's go. Let's head over earlier." Shan He nodded and instructed the elder next to her. "Then let's go." Elder Obai was like a puppet, his mind going blank as he followed the others and left. The Tianmin clan was a clan with a legacy of several centuries. Therefore, they would not just fly over with a group of people. To the people from the aristocratic clans, that was something that only nouveau riche and geniuses without any foundation would do. The people from the Tianmin clan arrived at a platform, and a dark blue airship was already parked there. This blue airship was a great treasure of the Tianmin clan, the Pantheon airship. It was a superb airship that the Tianmin clan had spent 50 years to build. Not only could it fly at 10 times the speed of sound, but it also combined defense, attack, and investigation into one. It could be said to be a weapon of war, and it was also a weapon used to support the Tianmin clan. Shan He looked at the Pantheon airship with a hint of pride and introduced it to Fong Xingjian. This Pantheon airship is the culmination of the countless efforts of our Tianmin clan's ancestors. Even if it were to face divine-level experts, its defense system would be able to put up a fight. What do you think? It's all right. Shan He brought Fong Xingjian along and walked onto the Pantheon airship. Several elders followed behind them, frowning slightly as they looked at Fong Xingjian. They had never seen Shan He being so close to a man before. Moreover, this man seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, and they had never heard Shan He mention him before. The middle-aged elder, Elder Grand, who had supported Shan He the most previously, frowned. What background does this person have? Why is Shan He so respectful toward him? However, although they did not bring up the fact that Shan He had brought along a man whom she did not know so suddenly, they did not mention it due to her status as the clan head. A short moment later, the flying shuttle was activated. Powerful magnetic forces were emitted from the flying shuttle, interacting with the geomagnetic forces. The entire flying shuttle flew out with a swoosh, reaching 10 times that of supersonic speed in almost 5 seconds as it flew rapidly toward the northern ice region. Shan He accompanied Fong Xingjian and stood at the bow of the ship, while Gran brought a few elders and stood at the back. Gran said, "Clan head, this time around, 6 of the clan heads from the 7 great clans will be here. The geniuses from the other clans will also be here. We've gathered some materials, and it's best for us to understand them in advance." Shan He nodded and said, "Go on, I'll listen." However, Elder Grand looked at Fong Xingjian with some hesitation. It seemed that he was not willing to share the information about the big families in front of an outsider. However, Shan He shook her head and said, "There's no need for you to have any reservations. This person is a trustworthy person. If you have anything to say, you can just say it directly." Hearing this, Grand's frown deepened. Just then, Fong Xingjian said, "There's no need to say anything. They're just a bunch of useless people. What's there to listen to?" Hearing this, Grand's frown deepened, and he started to look down on Fong Xingjian even more. Humph. Bai Di has dominated the clans and is the #1 young leader of the 6 great clans. Yet, he still treats the wise with respect and even became sworn brothers with a few young masters from the great clans. Even he isn't as arrogant as you are. When the other elders heard Fong Xingjian's arrogant words, they also felt very uncomfortable. Haha, he's really arrogant and ignorant. The 6 great clans have a deep background and have many geniuses and experts. How can you look down on them? This kid is really fearless because of his ignorance. Even if Fong Xingjian comes, Dongfang Ling is participating and the Empire's 5 princes find out about it, they won't look down on our clans. He's really an ignorant junior. But with this, Miss Shan, he should know what kind of person he is. Just as the few elders were waiting for Shan He to rebuke Fong Xingjian, she nodded and said, "That's true. Let's not listen to him then. Elders, you guys can go and rest. With the Pantheon arc speed, we'll be able to reach the northern ice region very soon." In Shan He's opinion, since Fong Xingjian was able to kill even the heads of the 6 great clans single-handedly with a single sword attack, those juniors from the 6 great clans were really nothing to him. However, Shan He's attitude caused a few elders to secretly frown. It's a pity that although this person is arrogant, Miss Sean, he seems to trust him a lot. If this were to continue, it probably wouldn't be a blessing for our Tianmen clan. That's right. Could it be that this person performed some martial arts and bewitched Miss Shanhe? Glenn and the few elders were communicating rapidly through information streams. They exchanged glances, each with a worried look in their eyes. Feng Xingjian would be able to easily deduce what they were thinking about. However, he did not care about it all. There were many people in the world who had all sorts of thoughts, and it was not like they would be able to affect him just by thinking about it. No matter how these elders looked at him, they would not be able to change the outcome of Feng Xingjian's trip. Therefore, Feng Xingjian naturally did not care about it all. Simultaneously, in a mysterious valley, the sun was shining brightly, birds were chirping, and flowers were fragrant. There were fields, flower beds, medicinal fields, and even horse farms in the entire valley. It gave off a feeling of paradise. A massive manor was built in the center of the valley. This was the headquarters of the Holy Light clan. Not only was it located in a flat valley that was like spring all year round, but the entire valley was also set up with a great formation of the gates of heaven. It could be said to be blessed by the heavens. Right now, there was a great commotion in the manor. Wave after wave of people kept on walking in from the entrance. Amidst the crowd, an extremely beautiful lady stood in a corner of the square like a crane among chickens. It was the Northern Ice region's top beauty, Audrey. She looked at the people coming and going with curiosity and asked, "There are so many experts? Why are there so many experts gathered here?" Next to her, a cute young lady smiled and said, "I told you that I'm here to bring you to see a grand scene, but you didn't believe me." Audrey had returned to the Northern Ice region to relax, but she had been brought by her best friend, Xing to participate in this gathering of the 6 great clans. As experts with powerful auras, deep auras, and exuberant vital energy and blood walked in, Audrey's expression grew increasingly surprised. There are so many experts, and they don't seem to be from the Northern Ice region, right? Why don't I know any of them? Xing smiled and said, "You know of the 8 divine level experts from the Empire's founding, right?" Seeing Audrey nod, Xing continued, "Other than the royal family, the 7 great clans left behind by the 7 divine level experts are participating in this gathering. To think that it's them?" Hearing this introduction, Audrey revealed an astonished expression. These 7 great clans had been in hiding ever since the Empire's empire was founded. Even Audrey had only vaguely heard rumors about them. Chapter 656. It said that these 7 great clans have been hiding behind the scenes for many years, but their hidden influence is not to be underestimated. They control countless aristocrats, factions, and organizations. What are they gathering for today? Audrey asked in surprise. It said that the 7 great clans are going to join forces, Xing said excitedly. "Look over there. That's the leader of the Lightning Path, Wade. And that one over there is the Eastern Sand Region's Friley clan." Audrey threw a glance over. Under Xing's introduction, the Fire Dance Sect, 5 Thunders Cult, Oath of Romance, Hero Society, and various other factions, organizations, and clans had all rushed over, displaying the unparalleled hidden influence of the 7 great clans. Just then, a series of gasps rang out from the crowd. Audrey and Xing looked over and saw a purple-haired young man with sharp eyebrows and sharp eyes walking over while being surrounded by others. Xing said agitatedly, "That's the young master of the Illusory clan, young Master Meng. He's one of the 4 gentlemen. As expected, he's also here this time around." Audrey frowned. "Is he very famous?" The great clans are a small circle. They interact with each other internally and don't think much of the small sects and factions outside, Xing explained. But young Master Meng has another nickname outside, Illusory Sword. Audrey was taken aback. Illusory Sword? Isn't that the #1 swordsman in the Southern Flame region? To think that he's young Master Meng from the 7 great clans? Haha, you didn't expect this, right? The influence of the 7 great clans is everywhere. Look at that person. He's the Northern Ice region's deputy governor, right? You didn't expect him to be a disciple of the Holy Light clan, right? Xing said proudly. The 7 great clans have a legacy of several centuries and have taken root in the empire. It's just that they usually hide themselves and don't reveal themselves. Once they really activate it, it'll be a world-shaking event that can stir up the world. Even the empire's royal family can't be easily humiliated. Audrey frowned and said, the royal family has divine-level experts backing them up. Xing shook her head and said, among the 7 great clans, 6 of the clan heads have already shared their remarkable abilities and attained the divine level. Who in the entire empire would be able to go up against 6 divine-level experts? Hearing this, Audrey drew in a cold gasp. 6 divine-level experts with several hundred years of legacies, endless influence, and wealth. Such existences were truly astonishing. Moreover, they were going to join forces now. At that moment, several more voices rang out. Audrey and Xing looked over and saw 3 young men who were either elegant, deep, or shrewd and tough walk in. Xing said, the Umbra clan's young Master Ing, the Night Massacre clan's young Master Yi, and the Berserk Dragon clan's young Master Long. The 4 nobles are all here now. Looking at the 4 gentlemen, Xing's eyes revealed a look of admiration. She said, these 4 people are the most outstanding people among the 7 great clans. Not only are they like the sun at noon in the circle of the great clans, but they are also the core members of the younger generation. They also have their own statuses outside, and their reputations are like the sun at noon. All of them are dragons among men. Xing sighed and said, it's said that the 4 of them are close to attaining the divine level, and they'll probably attain a breakthrough in a few months' time. By then, the 7 great clans will have over 10 divine-level experts. With an influence like this, they'll be able to sweep through the empire, and even the royal family will have to show them some respect. Looking at the 4 gentlemen who were surrounded in the center and receiving countless people's adoring, envious, and admiring gazes, Audrey frowned slightly, feeling worried for the empire's future situation. However, just then a shout rang out from outside the crowd. Bai Di is here. The 2 words Bai Di seemed to have a special magical power. With the appearance of these 2 words, the entire gathering fell silent, and no one spoke. Amidst the silence, as if the sound of a television had been switched off, everyone looked in the direction of the entrance with fanatical, adoring, and excited gazes. A young man with white hair, white clothes, and white eyes walked in slowly. The young man looked like the spring water on a snowy mountain, like the moonlight in the sky, like the innocence in a child's eyes, like the beautiful memories in everyone's hearts. He did not say a single word, nor did he do anything, but he gave off an unparalleled sense of trust and conviction, bringing with him an unbelievable affinity. With his arrival, the 4 gentlemen were the first to step forward and go up to welcome him. Elder brother, you're finally here. We've been waiting for you for a very long time. The 4 gentlemen welcomed Bai Di respectfully and passionately. The crowd and the surroundings were like planets surrounding the sun, surrounding him. Wherever Bai Di went, he would be the center of the entire gathering. There were people who kept on coming up to greet him, trying to get close to him. An extremely beautiful lady and the middle-aged man dressed in white, Uncle Ing, followed from afar. They looked at the man who was like a god, and their gazes were filled with an expression as if it was only natural. This was Bai Di, the pride of the 7 great clans, a hero who held great authority in the world, and an existence who was destined to go down in history. Audrey looked at Bai Di in astonishment. Even the 4 gentlemen were extremely respectful toward him, and the leaders of countless factions and clans were bowing and scraping before him. Who on earth was this person? Xing looked at Bai Di with a gaze as if she was looking at a miracle. It was as if she was looking at a god who had descended into the mortal world. This is Bai Di, the top person among the younger generation of the 7 great clans. He's the successor that the 6 old ancestors have acknowledged, and he's the person who holds authority over the 7 great clans. No, it wouldn't be too much to say that he's a god, Xing said with an infatuated expression. Xing said with an infatuated expression. He has an influence that can topple the world, a wealth that can rival a country's, and he has already attained a breakthrough to the divine level. He also has the support of the 6 old ancestors. Isn't such a person a god? Who is a god? Audrey looked at Bai Di with a grim countenance. In her impression of a man with such disposition, such prestige, and such a man seemed to be on par with Xia. In fact, he did not seem to be that far off from Fang Xingjian. Moreover, the authority that Bai Di held in his hands was far too terrifying. His influence had taken root in the empire and extended to all walks of life. It was almost omnipresent. The people who had come today were merely a small group of people from the 7 great clans. Who knew if the various experts and leaders they would encounter outside would be from the 7 great clans? This would be far too terrifying. Yet, all of these great influences were now groveling under the feet of a single person. Bai Di. Several tens of minutes later, the Pantheon Arc arrived in the sky above a stretch of endless snowy mountains. Several hundred meters away, there was a mountain that was stabbed into the ground in a slanted manner. It was like a huge sword that had been tossed down from the heavens. It was the Divine Sword Peak. The flying ship had just come to a stop when a white-clothed disciple flew over and said, "Everyone, you must be the esteemed guests of the Tianmen clan, right?" Then, under the lead of the white-clothed disciple, everyone arrived at a cave. On a formation that was emitting fluorescent light, a light door suddenly opened up. Stepping through the light door, everyone arrived at a valley filled with birdsong and fragrant flowers from a range of mountains that were sealed in ice. After walking through the door, a portion of the people turned their gazes toward Shanhe. However, after recognizing her identity, no one walked up to her. After all, the enraged lion and the head of the Tianmen clan had died in battle. The influence of the Tianmen clan was extremely weak, and Shanhe was naturally not valued by anyone. After entering the manor, Elder Obai shuddered and finally came back to his senses. Chapter 657. What's going on? What happened to me earlier? At the next moment, he saw Fang Xingjian, who was standing behind Shanhe. Was he the one who did this? However, to him, Fang Xingjian's matter was just an insignificant matter. What he was most concerned about was the benefits that Bai Di had promised him. Therefore, he paid no heed to Fang Xingjian and quickly walked toward Bai Di, who was in the center of the crowd. Shanhe looked at Fang Xingjian and asked, "Are you going to take action now?" Of course, Fang Xingjian did not take action immediately. He casually found a direction and sat down. His martial will darted through spatial gaps, and his infiltrating void sword intense scanned the entire place. After the celestial eradication sword formation had improved once again, the structure of his martial will had also changed once again. His heaven-connecting sword physique had become even more condensed, and the battle form of his martial will had also changed from the simple deathly sword intent to the infiltrating void sword intent, the light pursuit sword intent, the all-conquering sword intent, and the instant sword intent. The infiltrating void sword intents swept through the entire manor with extreme concealment and concealment. They silently swept through the entire manor and stored the information of the many nights' conditions into Fang Xingjian's brain. Concurrently, 3 white bone short swords and 1 thunder calamity darted through spatial gaps, surrounding the entire manor and setting up the celestial eradication sword formation. From this moment onward, the entire manor had become a cage, allowing entry but not exit. Hearing Shanhe's question, Fang Xingjian calmly scanned the entire place and said, "The people from the 6 great clans aren't all here yet, right? Let me know when they're all here. I can pack them up and pack them up together." Hearing his words, Elder Grand finally could not hold it in any longer and stepped forward, saying, "Mister, please be careful with your words. Right now, the people here are all the authoritative characters from our 7 great clans. If you speak recklessly, you might bring trouble upon yourself. The young miss has gotten you here to help, not to get you into trouble." Shawnee frowned and said, "Elder Grand, it's fine. Fong Xingjian waved his hand and said, "Do whatever you want. I'll make my move when everyone is here." Shani nodded, but she was already pulled away by Elder Grand and the others. Elder Grand said, "Young miss, let's go and meet with Lord by D first. Since we plan on joining the alliance of the clans, it's better for us to take the initiative to get in touch and fight for more benefits." Shani shook her head at the few elders and sat down next to Fong Xingjian. She was not an idiot. After knowing that Fong Xingjian had killed 5 clan heads in a row, she had completely understood Fong Xingjian's strength. Moreover, since she had chosen Fong Xingjian, she should go all the way. Otherwise, if she were to waver on both sides, it would not be good. Seeing Shanhe's actions, Elder Grand and the others were all infuriated. Elder Grand glared at the two of them and said, "Miss, are you really going to listen to this guy? Did you hear what he was saying? He's arrogant and ignorant to the extreme. To think that you would even believe such words." Shani carefully threw a glance at Fong Xingjian. Seeing that he had closed his eyes as if he was cultivating, she said, "You guys could just sit here and watch the show. This time around, it's our Tianmen clan's turn to be in the limelight among the 7 great clans." "Sigh, miss, you'll regret this." Elder Grand sat at the side, feeling indignant. He had already made up his mind that if Shan He and that guy were to have any evil ideas later on, he would have to stop them even if it meant that he would have to go against his superior. Elder Obai had already run off to meet Bai Di. However, there were too many people waiting to interact with Bai Di, and he only managed to squeeze his way in after waiting for several tens of minutes. The moment he saw Bai Di, Elder Obai said agitatedly, Lord Bai Di." "Oh." Bai Di paused for a moment, as if he had recalled who this person was. "Tianmen clan's Elder Obai." He patted Elder Obai's shoulder and said, "It's been hard on you this time around." Overwhelmed by the favor, Elder Obai said, "No, it's nothing. This is what we should do." He then pointed to the direction behind him and said, "Miss Shan He and the others have already arrived. This time around, the alliance between the 7 great clans will definitely be a major event that will go down in history. It's my honor to be able to participate in it." Bai Di smiled, consoled Elder Obai, and continued, "Has Shan He arrived as well? Where is she?" Elder Obai immediately said, "She was just with me earlier. Lord Bai Di, please wait for a moment. I'll go get her now." Bai Di smiled toward the surroundings. "I'm sorry, everyone. Then let us wait for Miss Shan He." "Haha, it's only right. It's Shan He's first time here," young Master Meng said with a smile. Young Master Yi also said, "It's just a small matter. Let Shan He come over first." However, Elder Obai had already run up to Shan He with a flash. He grabbed Shan He's hand and was about to rush over to where Bai Di was when he realized that Shan He had no intention of getting up. He said anxiously, "Miss, Bai Di has summoned you. Let's go over quickly." Shan He did not reply, but looked at Fong Xingjian. Fong Xingjian's eyes were still closed, as if he had lost all contact with the outside world. Therefore, Shan He replied, "I'm not going." Obai glared and said furiously, "Miss, what are you saying? Bai Di, the 4 young masters, and many other experts are waiting for us over there." Shan He waved her hand and said, "I'll be fine here. If you want to go, then go by yourself." Obai was furious, but he was unable to pull Shan He away. Just then, Bai Di's follower, Uncle Ling, walked over and urged, "What's going on? Why have you guys taken so long?" Just as Obai was about to explain, Fong Xingjian finally opened his eyes. Sword light flowed in his eyes, as if they contained a world of swords. "Is everyone here?" he asked Shan He. Shan He nodded and said, "Most of the upper echelon from the 6 great clans have arrived." Therefore, Fong Xingjian threw a nonchalant glance toward Uncle Ling and said, "Your abilities are still passable. Are you one of the upper echelon from the 6 great clans?" Uncle Ling frowned and said proudly, "I'm just a small follower of Lord Bai Di." He then looked toward Shan He. "Miss Shan He, everyone over there is waiting for you. Come with me quickly." However, Fong Xingjian shook his head and said, "Let Bai Di come over. I have something to discuss with him regarding the 6 great clans." "What?" Uncle Ling was stunned for a moment, thinking that he had heard wrongly. Elder Grand, Elder Obai, and the other elders from the Tianmin clan also became nervous. They looked at Fong Xingjian with eyes spewing flames and quickly explained, Mr. Ing, this person isn't from our Tianmin clan. He's spouting gibberish. Please ignore him. Uncle Ying's gaze gleamed with cold light as he strode toward Fong Xingjian. Miss Shan, it's not that I'm not giving you face, but since this person dares to insult Lord Bai Di, I can't let him off no matter what. Otherwise, what would become of the Holy Light clan's several centuries of rules? What would become of the prestige of the 6 great clans? Young man, I'll teach you a good lesson today. I'll let you know what it means by strict rules and what it means by saying that a loose tongue can cause trouble. Fong Xingjian said calmly, Why do weaklings need to fight? With that, he tapped out with a finger, and the infiltrating void sword intent darted into Uncle Ying's body. The latter was infuriated and wanted to resist at the start. However, he immediately felt pain, then cried out agonizingly, followed by despair. Within a short period of time, his cultivation was completely crippled, and he dropped to his knees with a thud. He looked at Fong Xingjian with a gaze filled with hatred and fury. Lord Bai Di won't let you off. Do you think that you can still leave after doing these things? Elder Obai gasped and stood up, looking at Fong Xingjian furiously. Be starred. Are you trying to get our Tianmin clan destroyed? Elder Grand groaned in agony, looking at the crippled Uncle Ing with a terrified expression. The many elders from the other Tianmin clan were first astonished, and then their faces turned ashen. To think that Bai Di's subordinate had been crippled. No one dared to imagine how furious Bai Di would be. Chapter 658. Elder Bai was the first to react. He let out a furious bellow, and as his body flashed, over 1,000 streams of white light burst out from his body, taking the form of several thousand gods. He then punched out across space, and the several thousand gods also punched out. It was as if the gods were enraged and were sending down divine punishment. A myriad of thunderbolts and flames surged out toward Fong Xingjian. Elder Bai had attacked furiously, instantly using his full power. But how many experts were there? With the 7 great clans and countless other influences, there were over 100 second transition knights, and there were even over 10 demigods. Elder Bai's attack had attracted everyone's gazes. Thoughts flashed through everyone's minds at lightning speed. This is the Tianmin clan's pantheon sacred palm? What a domineering palm force. To use his will to imitate the powers of the gods, and to use his physical body as the existence of the heavenly court. This is the power of the Tianmin clan. This is Elder Bai from the Tianmin clan. Who is the young man he's attacking? Bai's abilities aren't bad. It seems that this young man is doomed, unless someone could save him. Many thoughts flashed through everyone's minds, and at the next moment, Fong Xingjian's foot had already stepped on Elder Bai's chest without anyone noticing. Then the white light dissipated, and the thunderbolts and flames were extinguished like a candle being gently blown away. The force from Fong Xingjian's stomp had completely destroyed Bai's palm force. Simultaneously, amidst a loud boom, Bai was kicked to the ground, rolling to Uncle Ying's side. He knelt down on both knees, and his entire upper body fell limply onto the ground. Fong Xingjian kicked Bai back and said calmly, You can kneel as well. Bai let out a furious bellow, only to discover that he could not even open his mouth. He exerted all his strength, wanting to stand up, but he discovered that waves of sword intents were suppressing him, forcing him to kneel together with Uncle Ing. At the sight of this scene, expressions of astonishment, curiosity, and anticipation flashed across everyone's faces. Elder Grand's gaze flickered. He felt that a great calamity was about to befall him, and he was completely stunned. Xing was also taken aback. She looked at the scene in a daze. Who is this kid? To think that he would dare to make a move here. He's finished now. The Holy Light clan probably won't let him off. She heard a cry of surprise and turned to look at Audrey, only to find that Audrey was looking at Fong Xingjian in shock. Xing asked curiously, Audrey, you know him? On the other side, Emperor Bai and the rest looked over as well. But when they saw Fong Xingjian kicking Elder O Bai to the ground, they did not make a move. It was as if they did not want to. Young Master Ming, who had a head of purple hair and looked both real and illusory, frowned when he saw Bai Di. He immediately stepped forward considerately, looked at Fong Xingjian, and said, "Who are you? How dare you make a move here? Do you want to become enemies with our 7 great families?" "Become enemies?" Fong Xingjian glanced at him and said, "In front of me, you don't even have the qualification to run away. How can you be my enemy?" Young Master Ming was so infuriated that he started laughing. What an arrogant and ignorant person. Shan He, where did you find this clown? Shan He had not said a single word from the beginning to the end. She merely stood quietly behind Fong Xingjian like an obedient maid. Everyone present was also very surprised by this, and they looked at Fong Xingjian with an amused gaze. For even Shan He to be so obedient, everyone present became curious about Fong Xingjian's identity. Who on earth is this person? To think that he dares to make a move here. He probably has some backing. What's the use of having backing? Right now, the people from the 7 great clans are all here. Lord Bai Di has attained the divine level, and the 6 old ancestors are already extremely powerful. No matter how great his backing is, it's impossible that he can go up against the 7 great clans, right? Audrey also looked at this scene in astonishment. Although there were some changes to Fong Xingjian's appearance, she could still vaguely tell that there were some parts of him that were familiar. Could he be Fong Xingjian? Why has Xingjian returned here? Why would he go up against the 7 great clans? This is bad. The 7 great clans are a secretive circle. Xingjian probably doesn't know that the 6 old ancestors have already attained the divine level. This is bad. At the thought of this, Audrey's face was filled with anxiety. She wanted to remind Fong Xingjian about the 7 great clans. Hearing young Master Meng's words, Shan He finally lifted her head, shook it, and said, "Young Master Meng, you don't understand. Before Mr., it's meaningless even if the 7 great clans join forces. You should surrender quickly in case you regret it." Ha ha ha. Hearing that, young Master Meng laughed maniacally as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Even if the 7 great clans join forces, it won't be enough? Do you think that he's Alexander or the Guardian King of the Holy Sea of Truth? Even if the Guardian King of the Holy Sea of Truth were to come today, he wouldn't be able to humiliate our 7 great clans. Lad, you've been in the limelight today. Next, you'll have to pay with your life. Before he finished his words, young Master Meng had already made his move. It was as if he had turned into a puff of green smoke, completely losing his physical form. A dreamlike and illusory state gushed out. In everyone's eyes, the sky seemed to have dimmed, the earth seemed to have distorted, and the entire world seemed to have become fragmented. The distance, the light, the darkness, the front, the back, and the back all seemed to be in conflict. It was as if everyone was deep in a dream. Subconsciously, everyone could not help but feel impressed by this move, secretly praising it. However, the next moment, a foot descended from the sky. It was like the foot of a demon king from hell, tearing the world apart and shattering the dreamlike atmosphere. Young Master Ming let out an astonished cry and was about to retreat when he felt a strong gust of wind gushing toward him together with the other party's power. The wind pressure was so strong that it was as heavy as Mount Tai, pressing down on him to the point that he could not move at all. Divine light flashed, and several tens of beams of colorful light shot out. They were the various divine weapons that young Master Ming had brought along with him. However, before this foot, these divine weapons were like children's toys. Amidst loud explosions, they were crushed by the sword force across space. With a bang, the palm finally stomped down on young Master Ming's head. With a thud, young Master Ming was forced to his knees by the force from the sole of the foot. His knees created 2 small pits in the ground. However, this gush of power did not stop at all and continued to stomp down. Ah! Young Master Ming let out an enraged bellow, and the power of the 1,024 specialty seeds in his body erupted crazily. Waves of fragrant aura rose up. However, even as his bones creaked and his muscles bled profusely, he still managed to hang on for less than 1,000th of a second before he fell to the ground once again. His head was stomped into the ground. Feng Xingjian stepped on young Master Meng's head with one foot and stepped on the ground with the other. He crossed his arms before his chest and looked at the 7 great clans. I am Feng Xingjian. In the next minute, those who kneel down will not have to die. Chapter 659. As Feng Xingjian stomped down on young Master Meng, everyone present was astonished. However, at the next moment, as Feng Xingjian announced his identity, everyone present was even more astonished. Feng Xingjian? So it's him? No wonder he dared to make a move. It's that Feng Xingjian who killed Xia and crippled the first prince? He's really audacious. Elder Grand's eyes were filled with understanding. So that's how it is. To think that it's Feng Xingjian. It's no wonder that Miss Shan he indulges him so much. However, at the next moment, a hint of hatred flashed in Elder Grand's eyes. But miss, you're up against the powers of the 6 great clans. The 6 old ancestors have long attained the divine level. Even if Feng Xingjian is able to go up against them, what will our Tianmin clan do? At this moment, Elder Grand only felt that Shan he was still too young to have made such a rash decision. Grand sighed inwardly. Young miss, do you know that you've brought our Tianmin clan into a vortex? After hearing Feng Xingjian's identity, everyone finally understood what he was relying on. For him to be able to kill the undying Xia, defeat the blue sacred moonlight, and cripple the first prince, it was true that he had the ability to dominate the world. However, right now he was up against Bai Di, one of the 7 great clans. Xingxing shook her head. So it's Feng Xingjian. He's even more audacious than the rumors say. However, he's not up against the 2nd-tier divine level expert Xia, the 2nd-tier divine level expert blue sacred moonlight, or the first prince. Instead, he's up against the 7 great clans, which are Bai Di and the 6th ancestor, who have been controlling countless influences in the empire for over 100 years. They're extremely wealthy and have great authority. What Xingxing said was also what many people present were thinking. To them, it was true that Feng Xingjian was very powerful. If any of them were to encounter him, they would probably have no choice but to lower their heads and give in. However, before the 7 great clans, which have been operating for several centuries, and the 6 old ancestors who had attained the divine level with their boundless remarkable powers, Feng Xingjian appeared to be a little weak. Not to mention, the other party had already made the empire's royal family wary of him. How could he dare to provoke another enemy? I understand now. It's probably because Feng Xingjian doesn't know that the 6 old ancestors have already advanced to the divine level, right? Haha. I wonder how Feng Xingjian would feel if he were to know that there are 7 divine level experts behind the 7 great clans. He will probably regret it to death. He has already offended the royal family, and now he even dares to provoke the 7 great clans. No matter how much of a genius he is, if he doesn't know when to stop, he won't be able to live for long. Everyone looked at Feng Xingjian as if they were watching a good show, as if they were waiting for him to find out the truth. As for what Feng Xingjian said about kneeling down and not dying, they didn't take it to heart at all. The great beauty standing behind Bai Di thought the same as well. She looked at Feng Xingjian and shook her head. It's a pity that you managed to barge your way in today. If it were any other time, you would still have a way out. However, the 7 great clans are gathered here today, and you won't be able to leave so easily. Amongst the 4 gentlemen, young Master Yi had the best relationship with young Master Meng. Seeing that his good friend was being trampled under Feng Xingjian's feet, fury flashed in his eyes. He was the first to step out and say, Feng Xingjian, you probably still don't understand what kind of opponent you've offended, right? Our 7 great clans have developed for several centuries, and our accumulations far surpass your imagination. Right now, the 6 old ancestors have all advanced to the divine level, and Lord Bai Di has also stepped in a tier 1 of the divine level. before the 7 divine level experts. Even the Empire's royal family won't be able to humiliate us. To think that you dare to humiliate our clans here today. You really don't know what's good for you. Young Master Yi knew that he was not Feng Xingjian's match at all. Therefore, he did not plan on making a move. Instead, he spoke frankly with assurance, each of his words hitting the nail on the head. Feng Xingjian, if you don't wish to become enemies with our 7 great clans that have been around for 100 years, and if you don't wish to offend our 7 divine level experts, then surrender and apologize. Only then will you have a chance to live. Hearing young Master Ye's words, everyone present laughed. They looked at Feng Xingjian as if they were looking at a clown who had walked into the wrong place. They were waiting to see Feng Xingjian's astonished and dazed gaze. However, Feng Xingjian did not show any signs of surprise. Instead, he looked at young Master Yi as if he was looking at a fool. Then he exhaled like a sword and exhaled. Trash. Bang! A stream of white light shot out, releasing a loud sound as if several 10,000 bolts of lightning had swept across in void space. Young Master Yi was sent flying as if he had been electrocuted. He knocked through 12 small buildings in an instant, bringing up a great amount of dust as he flew out. Then with a loud boom, he collided into a wall, and the lower half of his body was smashed into a pool of mud. How dare you? When Bai Di saw that Feng Xingjian had made his move, he already knew that the situation was bad. However, just as he was about to make a move, the sword cheese that Feng Xingjian had shot out flickered in and out of existence, darting through spatial gaps. He had a feeling that he was unable to grasp it. In this moment of hesitation, young Master Yi was already half paralyzed from the beating, and he was slowly squirming as he regenerated. As white sacred light extended out, Bai Di's martial will shot out amidst the sacred light. Feng Xingjian, how dare you? I didn't want to make an enemy out of you, but to think that you don't know what's good for you, offending our 7 great clans time and time again. You're really courting death. Do you really think that we're not a match for you? From today onward, our 7 great clans, the 7 divine level experts, will fight to the death with you. As Bai Di's martial will extend it out like sacred light, there is a scorching feeling in the air. Being encompassed by the sacred light, everyone felt ashamed of their inferiority and had the thought of committing suicide to atone for their sins. What a powerful judgment divine light. It said that under the illumination of this judgment divine light, it can make one's guilt reach an extreme. When trained to an extreme, one can force one to commit suicide with just a gaze. Streams of white light burst out, accompanied by the loud and clear sounds of hymns and music. Waves of epic feeling that came from the primordial universe and ancient humans gushed out. Everyone seemed to have seen the heroic spirit of generations of humans sacrificing themselves to save humanity and the world. A feeling of joining in and sacrificing themselves, a feeling of guilt and remorse toward what they had done in the past, gradually gushed into their hearts. It was the Holy Light clan's ultimate martial technique, the Judgment Divine Light. It was an extremely powerful martial technique with the concept of sacrificing all lives to save the world. It was an unrivaled secret art that attacked the heart. The beautiful lady stood behind Bai Di, watching as he floated up like a god and stepped on void space, sending out a myriad of light rays. Great waves of astonishment surged in her heart. Bai Di's strength has increased again. I remember that his Judgment Divine Light wasn't this powerful the last time. To think that even I have the thought of sacrificing my life like a moth flying into a flame. Despite this, Feng Xingjian is still an expert who has killed a Tier 2 divine level expert after all. Bai Di is probably still a little lacking. However, at the next moment, everyone understood what Bai Di was relying on. Streams of light pillars rose up within a range of several leagues. Bai Di knew how powerful Feng Xingjian was, and thus activated the Great Mountain Protection Formation the moment he made his move. Under the reinforcement of the formation, he was completely encompassed by white light. His aura kept on rising, and endless power gushed out from his limbs and bones. Within a range of several leagues, The power of sunlight that had been accumulated for several centuries was now gathered on by Dee's body. How terrifying would the prowess of several hundred years' worth of sunlight be unleashed in a single second? It was the equivalent of unleashing the power of sunlight that was several billion times that of the entire valleys in a single second. Or perhaps it was equivalent to condensing and unleashing all the sunlight in the entire sky at this moment. With such terrifying power, even the space seemed to tremble as if it was melting. It was only then that everyone reacted. That's right. There's still the Holy Light Clan's Great Mountain Protection Formation. This formation has accumulated power for countless years. Even Fong Xingjian won't be able to break through it easily. This is the Holy Light Clan's accumulation. Bai Di walked toward Fong Xingjian one step at a time. His body did not change at all, but it was as if he was holding up the heavens and holding up the earth. On the contrary, Fong Xingjian appeared increasingly insignificant. It was as if he was a vile person who had gathered all the malicious intents in the world. Bai Di said coldly, Fong Xingjian, this heavenly formation has never been activated in the 300 years since it was set up. Moreover, it only has the power for one attack. The wealth that has been expended over the past 300 years is enough to buy the entire Northern Ice region. It was originally prepared for the experts of the Mage Association or the Holy Sea of Truth. Now that you've died under this formation, you can be proud. Chapter 660. Everyone had the misconception that Bai Di should kill this despicable person immediately. Many thoughts flashed past before everyone's eyes at lightning speed, but the passing of time in the real world was still very fast. Bai Di emitted sacred light all over his body and appeared before Fong Xingjian, slapping down with his palm. He brought with him the conviction of atonement, sacrifice, and salvation. Under the reinforcement of the protective formation, the power that Bai Di unleashed right now was one that could destroy the world. Violent powers came gushing down, and the white light was distorted into a lump of light. It was condensed to the point that it seemed material, pressing down toward Fong Xingjian. It was as if an entire sun had been thrown at Fong Xingjian. Amidst the layers of white light, physical particles started to seethe, releasing millions and millions of explosions at every moment. However, they were locked down firmly by the distorted space and gathered toward Fong Xingjian. Faced with this palm that came descending from the sky, which represented salvation and contained the power of the sun, Fong Xingjian let out a cold snort and reached out his claw explosively toward Bai Di. Each of the fingers on the huge claw seemed to contain a sword intent. They reached out as if they were tearing the world apart, tearing the light of judgment into pieces. Then bang, 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 bang. Explosive sounds rang out, and Fong Xingjian's physical body collapsed and then reassembled. His physical body turned into a giant with a height of several hundred meters under the transformation of his martial will, and he grabbed Bai Di. What? Bai Di was unable to break through the white light that burst out from his body. What astonished him the most was that the attack that he had used to activate the formation and condense all his powers had been easily broken by Fong Xingjian. At the next moment, the formation continued to attack. A myriad of light pillars shot out explosively, piercing through the sky and shooting toward Fong Xingjian's body. Although this formation did not have the support of the gates of heaven, it had stored and gathered a tremendous amount of sunlight's power within a range of several lis. After several hundred years of accumulation, its prowess far surpassed that of the formation on the tropical island that had the gates of heaven. However, how much stronger was the current Fong Xingjian? In the face of the white light that filled the sky, he directly stomped on the ground and roared again. He was like a mad, ancient Tyrannosaurus Rex. As he roared, layers of sound waves surged out, causing the space to distort as they radiated outwards. Surging waves of air swept out from the ground under his foot. With just a stomp and a roar, everything within 100 miles exploded. The entire valley was in ruins, and the manor was sent flying. The 10,000 pillars of light were shattered, and the grand spell formation was shattered with this roar. Baidi's body was shattered into pieces, turning into a white light that gathered in Feng Xingjian's palm. He exclaimed, "Feng Xingjian, the 6 old ancestors will not let you off. Let me go." Feng Xingjian clenched his palm with a paw, crushing Bai Di into a lump of meat paste. Then he tossed him out with a boom. Bai Di was crushed into a pile of minced meat and smashed into the ground. It was as if a meteor had crashed into the ground, creating a huge crater and stirring up a great amount of dust. He twisted and struggled to regenerate. "Jacob and the other 5 have been seriously injured and killed by me. If he dares to come out today, I'll take the opportunity to strip the Panwu heavenly raiment from his body." On the ground, the houses were destroyed. However, everyone present was an expert. They all retreated and dodged, and none of them died. Uncle Ing, Bai, and young Master Meng, who were kneeling down, were encompassed by Feng Xingjian's sword intense and were unscathed. As the infiltrating void sword intense radiated out, Feng Xingjian's words and the scene of the 6 clan heads being killed and seriously injured were transmitted into everyone's minds in the blink of an eye. If Feng Xingjian were to release this scene from his memories, the people present would probably not believe it so easily. They might even suspect that Feng Xingjian had casually framed them to deceive them. However, now that Feng Xingjian had crushed all of them, casually smashing Bai Di into minced meat and bringing along an astonishing aura, no one dared to doubt him anymore. Feng Xingjian, amidst his bellows, Bai Di once again regenerated his physical body. He soared up into the sky, as if he was going to fight once again. However, before he could fly out 3 meters, Feng Xingjian's huge foot had already stomped down. As this stomp came crashing down, many cracks that were several kilometers long extended out in all directions with the sole of his foot as the center. After crushing Bai Di into minced meat once again, Feng Xingjian said coldly, "You guys still have 52 seconds. A violent aura engulfed the entire valley, and the astonishing prowess continued to reverberate in everyone's hearts. The scene of Feng Xingjian flattening the Holy Light clan with 1 foot, killing the 5 clan heads with 5 sword attacks, dealing Jacob with serious injuries, and going up against Alexander continued to reverberate in their minds. Everyone seemed to have just recalled what Feng Xingjian had said. Those who knelt would not die. With a thud, Elder Grand was the first to drop to his knees. "I was wrong. It's Miss Shan, he who has good judgment. Feng Xingjian has really appeared out of nowhere. There's probably no one in the entire empire who will be able to stop him in the future." Following that, thud-thud sounds rang out incessantly, and the people from the great clans knelt down one after another. Young Master Lei bellowed furiously, "Are you guys crazy? To think that you guys would believe the nonsense that Feng Xingjian spouted. Stand up. All of you stand up." Young Master Lei walked over and pulled them up time and time again. However, those people paid him no heed, all of them rushing to kneel down. Right now, in their eyes, Feng Xingjian was a living legend, a true legend. Xingxing looked at this scene in a daze. Looking at Feng Xingjian, who was standing between the heavens and the earth, her mouth was agape from the beginning to the end, unable to close it. To think that even the 6 old ancestors were defeated, even Bai Di couldn't withstand a single blow. How powerful is this Feng Xingjian? Finally, her legs went limp, and she knelt down as well. Simultaneously, she looked toward Audrey and said with a bitter smile, "Audrey, I wanted to get you to join us, but you're already being protected by Feng Xingjian. This time around, it's true that I've been too rash." Audrey shook her head and did not say a word. She merely looked at Feng Xingjian with a complicated expression. Right now, in her eyes, Feng Xingjian was crushing Bai Di and slaying the 7 great clans with his sword. He was simply too cool. The beautiful lady who had been standing behind Bai Di was also wearing a dejected expression. She had not expected such a thing to happen. "Bai Di, to think that Bai Di has failed? How is this possible? To think that Feng Xingjian has defeated the 6 old ancestors? How is this possible? However, Feng Xingjian did not even look at these people who were kneeling down. His infiltrating void, sword intense, continued to radiate out toward the surrounding valleys. Simultaneously, he let out a bellow, bringing up great waves of clouds and tearing apart a stretch of blue sky. Jacob, scram out here. If you still don't come out, I'm going to trample your precious successor to death completely. Bai Di struggled crazily under Feng Xingjian's feet. However, wrapped up by layers of sword cheese, he was unable to move at all. He was being trampled on tightly, and at this moment, endless feelings of humiliation surged in his mind. Just then, a series of sand and pebbles were suddenly sent flying. 6 figures descended from the sky, and Jacob's will came gushing over. Feng Xingjian, you asked for this. Chapter 661. Holy Light, Dark Shadow, Night Massacre, Fervent Dragon, Thunder King, and Dream. The figures of the heads of the 6 great clans appeared in the sky, and their materialized martial wills descended from the sky. When they landed on the ground, large amounts of dust splattered. Powers continued to press against each other in the atmosphere. Mountains shattered, cloud layers shattered, and all sorts of rocks and debris were pushed up into the air. The figures of the 6 clan heads drew out long shadows under the sunlight. Each of them exuded terrifying auras that were as vast as the mountains and seas. They were like roaring volcanoes, seething tsunamis, and raging earthquakes. Power, endless power, gushed out from the bodies of the 6 of them. There was even a hint of diabolic energy within them. Clearly, the 6 of them had gained a lot from comprehending black magic over the past 2 days. Each of their abilities had improved tremendously. Seeing the appearance of the 6 clan heads, the people from the 6 great clans all revealed surprised expressions. It's Jacob and the others. The 6 old ancestors are back. Haha, does this mean that they didn't die? To think that Feng Xingjian dared to deceive us. Young Master Yi and young Master Meng, who had been half kneeling on the ground, stood up with the help of young Master Lei and young Master Long. They looked at the 6 old ancestors in the sky and Feng Xingjian, who was standing on the ground, with gleeful expressions. Feng Xingjian, to think that you dare to offend the dignity of our 6 great clans. You're dead, meet this time around. It was not just the 4 young masters. Many other people who had been kneeling on the ground stood up as well. When the 6 old ancestors descended, the waves of auras that were like mountains and seas that blotted out the sky were far too terrifying. The martial wills of the 6 divine-level experts filled up every inch of space within a range of 100 lis like water, causing one to feel a sense of despair as if they were unable to put up any resistance at all. The eyes of the beautiful lady who had been standing behind Bai Di flashed, and hope burned in her eyes. That's right. How can the 6 old ancestors be killed by Feng Xingjian so easily? We've all been deceived by him. Her breathing quickened as she looked at the 6 majestic voices in the sky and said softly, as long as the 6 old ancestors are still around, it's impossible for the 6 great clans to be wiped out. Even Feng Xingjian will have to give in. Xingxing also looked at the sky in astonishment. To think that the 6 old ancestors aren't dead? Feng Xingjian lied to us? She suddenly felt a chill run down her spine, as though the eyes of the 6 great patriarchs had swept over her. Damn it, I just surrendered. Will the 6 great ancestors blame me wrongly after this? Thinking of this, Xingxing broke out in cold sweat, and she jumped up abruptly. Such a thing had happened to most of the people present. Even Shan, he revealed an astonished expression. The 6 patriarchs are not dead. Not only did they not die, but from the looks of it, their skills have increased greatly, and their strength has reached a whole new level. Her pair of beautiful eyes seemed to be on fire. Feng Xingjian, you lied to me? Under Feng Xingjian's feet, which was several hundred meters tall, Bai Di laughed out loud. Feng Xingjian, the 6 old ancestors have arrived. Why aren't you surrendering? Do you think that you could deceive us with your little tricks? Subduing the 6 great clans? With a smacking sound, as Fong Xingjian ground down his feet, Emperor Bai was once again squashed into a pile of meat paste. He let out all sorts of incomprehensible howls and cries. Be starred, how dare you? With this action from Fong Xingjian, the head of the Holy Light clan, Jacob, was enraged. He slapped down with his palm, and the sky suddenly darkened. A pillar of light descended from the sky, encompassing toward Fong Xingjian. This pillar of judgment divine light clearly had the demeanor of the gates of heaven formation back at the tropical island. For a casual attack from Jacob to have such an effect, it was clear that his powers had increased tremendously. As he made his move, the other 5 clan heads also let out explosive bellows in unison, and 5 gushes of martial will gathered toward the judgment divine light. The entire pillar of divine light was as white as milk, plunging down like a light sword piercing into the ground. The ground shattered, as if it had been slashed into a canyon. To begin with, they had only wanted to use a single move against Fong Xingjian. They did not hope that Fong Xingjian would be defeated, but they wanted to be able to deal a blow to Fong Xingjian's prestige, push him back, and say bye. However, they did not know that Fong Xingjian did not care about this judgment divine light that the 6 of them had joined forces with. He was bathed in the white light, receiving hundreds of millions of attacks at every moment, yet he remained unscathed. Let's disperse. As he spoke, Fong Xingjian punched toward the sky, and the light pursuit sword intent swept out. The judgment divine light shattered inch by inch, and the white light surged out. The sky turned from darkness to light. After breaking through the joint forces of the 6 with a single punch, Fong Xingjian leaped abruptly and dashed toward the 6 clan heads. Excellent. The 5 of you were created by Alexander, right? Then I'll kill you all once more. At the second tier of the divine level, one's martial will and flesh and blood could be interchanged. Right now, Fong Xingjian had transformed his martial will into a huge body. His huge body, which was several hundred meters tall, was like a tall mountain. As he leaped up, the earth trembled violently, and the ground was torn apart. The surrounding valleys shattered and collapsed, as if a magnitude 10 earthquake had occurred. The even more terrifying thing was that his huge body, which was several hundred meters tall, had transcended the speed of sound and charged toward the 6 clan heads. How terrifying was the prowess of having a physical body that was several hundred meters tall surpass the speed of sound. It was as if a meteor that could destroy the world had landed. Before he arrived, violent air currents had already smashed onto the bodies of the 6 clan heads like the fists of several thousand conferred knights. Amidst an astonished cry, Fong Xingjian slapped his hand onto the Dark Shadow clan's head, and the latter exploded into a pool of blood. Fong Xingjian then struck out across space, and an atmospheric dragon tore through void space, tearing the Night Massacre clan's head into dust. Fong Xingjian then let out an enraged bellow, and as the sound waves swept out, another 3 clan heads were turned into minced meat. In the blink of an eye, the 5 clan heads were beaten half to death. This was especially the case with the explosive bellow at the end. The world trembled, and countless people fell down while foaming at the mouth. Looking at Fong Xingjian, who was in the sky, there were only 3 words that kept on echoing in the minds of everyone present. Tianmen clan's elder grand wore a dazed expression as he said, "Impressive ferocity, impressive ferocity." This Fong Xingjian is really an unrivaled ferocious person. However, for the 6 old ancestors to dare to come this time around, it was clear that they had made preparations. Although 5 of their physical bodies had been destroyed at one go, Jacob was still unfazed. Streams of intense, holy light kept on emitting from his body. Fong Xingjian, do you think that you've won for sure? We'll let you witness our true power now. As Jacob said this, 6 lumps of light suddenly appeared. Each of them encompassed a portion of the Panwu heavenly raiment's powers. Then, under everyone's gaze, they collided together with a bang. I'll form the head. I'll form the torso. I'll form the arms. I'll form the right leg. I'll form the left leg. As waves of martial will were displayed, the Panwu heavenly raiment once again formed together. The Panwu heavenly raiments will have been completely wiped out, and right now, the 6 old ancestors had completely grasped the Panwu heavenly raiment's powers. When they were unleashed explosively at this moment, they were clearly comparable to a Tier 4 divine level expert. A figure in golden armor that was 1,000 meters tall stood in the clouds, looking at Feng Xingjian as if he was looking at a child. Then he smacked out a punch toward Feng Xingjian. Die! Chapter 662. The Panwu heavenly raiment in the hands of the 6 clan heads had been restored by the Gold Mage, King, using Gold Faction black magic. Not only had the will in it been wiped out, but its power had also been restored to its peak. Although this divine armor was not comparable to the Hell's White Bone armor, the Hell's White Bone armor could only be used for defense. However, this Panwu heavenly raiment contained the Mountainous Sea dynasty's conjecture of Pangu's martial prowess and possessed an extremely powerful offensive prowess. Back then, when Feng Xingjian was dealing with the Hell's White Bone armor, he could only rely on the power of the Hades Vault's self-destruction. What would happen to this Panwu heavenly raiment, which was slightly weaker than the Hell's White Bone armor? The 1,000-meter-tall, golden-armored deity smashed down with a punch, and a huge shadow almost covered up a small part of the valley. As strong gales blew, countless experts were sent flying. So big. To think that the martial will could be transformed into such a massive figure? It's not the power of the 6 clan heads, but the power of that divine armor. However, this is already sufficiently terrifying. The size of the physical body that the martial will can transform into represents how great its power is. From the 2nd tier of the divine level onward, the martial will that contained endless possibilities could start transforming into a physical body. The stronger the power of the martial will, the larger the physical body it could transform into. At this stage, it could be said that the larger the growth of the physical body, the greater the power. The Western Land's legendary god of creation, Pangu, had boundless power, and his body was even larger than the entire Western Land. That was an unimaginable power. The Panwu heavenly raiment was a creation that the Mountainous Sea dynasty had created after studying the mysteries of Pangu. Now that its power was realized, it immediately created this 1,000-meter-tall, golden-armored deity. By the looks of it, Feng Xingjian's body, which was several hundred meters tall, was not even half the size of the golden-armored deity. The difference in their power seemed to be very obvious. Where did this divine armor come from? What terrifying power! With the 6 clan heads joining forces, how powerful are they now? Tier 3 or 4 of the divine level. Tier 5? Just as many thoughts flashed through everyone's minds. The golden-armored deity's fist, which was like a small hill, had already smashed down before Feng Xingjian. His entire arm was filled with distorted space, and his fist was only left with balls of blurry golden light. Under the layers of distorted light, it was impossible to see what was inside. This punch was so ferocious that it could send an entire city flying in a single breath. Now, it was continuously unleashed without holding back, and it was even condensed into a ball under the distortion of space. Faced with this punch, Feng Xingjian did not dodge at all. He tapped out with his sword fingers consecutively, sending out streams of all-conquering sword attacks. The terrifying sword intent seemed to have come to life as it cut through the distorted space and slashed downwards. Amidst the crisp, crackling sounds, large patches of sparks shot out from the arms of the golden-armored deity, as if meteors were streaking across the surface of his body. Under the continuous slashes of the all-conquering sword intent, after streams of brilliant sparks, blood splattered all over the sky, directly slashing the golden-armored deity until he was covered in blood. Large amounts of blood burst out, and the wounds were so deep that bones could be seen. In the end, the entire arm was only connected by a bit of skin and flesh. Blood clots fell onto the ground, and each clump was like a heavy truck, smashing out many huge pits in the ground. Even a single drop of blood that fell would be like a shot put, hitting the ground with loud, banging sounds. However, faced with such serious injuries, the golden-armored deity was unable to stop his actions at all. As he continued to slash, his entire fist smashed onto Feng Xingjian's body with a loud boom. Then the fist, which was like a heavenly pillar, smashed onto Feng Xingjian's body and smashed onto the ground without stopping at all. Boom! Violent shock waves radiated out in all directions from the point where Feng Xingjian had come into contact with the ground. Seething smoke and dust shot out like many huge dragons. With a single punch, the world fell apart. This was the result of most of the power being condensed together, with less than 1/10,000th of the power being unleashed. With a boom, Feng Xingjian's body completely exploded, turning into a pool of blood. Large chunks of his body could be seen struggling and twisting as if wanting to be reborn. The golden-armored deity laughed. "Feng Xingjian, it's over for you." With that, he smashed down with his fist once again, and Feng Xingjian's flesh and blood were smashed into a myriad of bloody foams. Boom, 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 boom. Loud booms rang out incessantly, and each time, the ground would tremble and the mountains and rivers would shatter. Everyone looked at this scene in astonishment, as if they were stunned by the power of the golden-armored deity. Audrey covered her mouth and said in disbelief, "How could this be?" Xing Er's face was filled with astonishment. "Strong, too strong. The powers of the 6 old ancestors are really unfathomable." In the ruins in the distance, Shanhe's face was filled with despair, as if she was unable to accept the outcome. Elder Grand dashed over rapidly, grabbed Shanhe's arm, and was about to escape. "Young miss, leave quickly. After Feng Xingjian is beaten to death, the 6 old ancestors will probably come looking for us." Shani shook her head, and the despair in her eyes grew even more intense. "Escape? Escape to where? The 6 old ancestors are extremely powerful. Who will be able to fend them off? Who will be able to protect us? The world is so big, and there's no longer anywhere for us to go." With that, she collapsed onto the ground, her eyes filled with a dazed look. At the moment they stopped, young Master Lei, young Master Yi, young Master Long, and young Master Meng all came over, looking at Shanhe with ridicule. "Shanhe, you really have a good eye. Do you think that Feng Xingjian is really reliable? There's no need to say much to them. Let's just listen to the 6 old ancestors' instructions later on." In the distance, Bai Di stood up with a pale countenance, trembling all over. The beautiful lady supported him, feeling the continuous tremors from the ground. She looked at the 1,000-meter-tall, golden-armored deity and said in astonishment, "What divine armor is this? What great power! This is the Panwu heavenly raiment that master and adoptive father have been preparing to subdue for the past 3 years. It contains the supreme power of the Western Land's mountainous sea dynasty." Bai Di looked at the physical body that had been smashed into smithereens by Feng Xingjian and said with a cold smile, "Faced with such power, even 10 Feng Xingjian and you wouldn't be able to fend them off. This is also the true trump card of our 6 great clans." However, at the next moment, a huge shadow descended from the sky. It was unknown when it had started, but the entire valley, or rather, the snowy mountains and the surroundings, had been covered up by that endless shadow. "Little bug, have you had enough?" The golden-armored deity came to a stop and lifted his head. The endless black shadow filled up the entire sky, and he could not see what it was. It was far too big. "What is it?" It took the patriarchs a full second to regroup and shrink the black shadows in their sea of consciousness. Only then did they realize what they were seeing. It was Feng Xingjian's massive body, which had a height of over 100,000 meters, sitting cross-legged in void space. Feng Xingjian was also under the same shadow, with one hand supporting his chin and the other placed on his knee. Feng Xingjian was looking at the golden-armored deity as if he was looking at an ant. How is this possible? The golden-armored deity turned his head and saw that the rotten flesh he had smashed had gradually turned into Jacob's appearance. Chapter 663. Is it fun? Feng Xingjian's voice rang out, as if it had come from beyond the heavens. Disbelief, doubt, and disbelief flashed in the eyes of the 6 clan heads. These were then followed by bottomless despair. They did not understand at the start. They did not understand how Feng Xingjian had managed to change himself back into Jacob's body. However, when they saw the massive figure before them once again, they finally understood. The size of the physical body that the will had transformed into represented the strength of the martial will. How powerful was Feng Xingjian's strength for him to be able to transform into such a massive physical body? With such a powerful physical body, it had shrouded their senses, and it had been too easy for him to capture Jacob without them realizing it. This was not some technique. It was just a stark difference in strength. Just as the 6 old ancestors were pondering, Feng Xingjian's fingertips stretched out, and 2 fingers that were several thousand meters long pressed out. Each of his fingers had the power to instantly flatten a city. It was as if 2 huge dragons had descended from the sky, bringing about air currents that swept out in all directions and flattened the sky. There was not a single cloud in sight. Powers seethed, and the space was like ripples. The golden-armored deity bellowed furiously and punched out, but it was meaningless. He was like a fly that was pinched between 2 of Feng Xingjian's fingers, pinching him lightly. Feng Xingjian then exerted a little force with his thumb and index finger, and with an explosive bang, the golden-armored deity that the Panwu heavenly raiment had transformed was crushed into minced meat. The golden armor shattered and shrunk back to its original size, spinning as it flew toward Feng Xingjian's palm. As for the 5 clan heads who had been seriously injured by Feng Xingjian's finger, their martial wills had just reassembled and appeared in the atmosphere when Feng Xingjian opened his mouth and exhaled. With a single exhale, strong gales exploded, and the 5 clan heads' martial wills were shattered into specks of starlight, scattering in the sky. After doing all these, a hint of indifference flashed in Feng Xingjian's eyes. He lifted his head and looked toward the sky. His eyes were hazy, and it was as if the entire universe and the world's circulation were flashing in them. Of course, Feng Xingjian's 100,000-meter-tall physical body was not transformed purely from his own martial will. Although his martial will was at 1,150 points, it was impossible for his physical body, which was equivalent to 1,150 points in strength, agility, reaction, endurance, and flexibility, to reach a size of 100,000 meters. After the celestial eradication sword formation had improved once again, he had been able to make further use of the celestial eradication sword formation, which was why he was able to do what he was doing now. At this moment, Feng Xingjian's entire being seemed to be immersed in this boundless power. He felt as though every breath he took would cause a violent gust of wind, causing the weather to change. Every heartbeat caused the blood in his body to surge, causing the earth to tremble and the veins of the earth to change. His every movement and every change had a huge impact on the entire world. It was as if he had become a world of his own. Just like that, Feng Xingjian was immersed in this unprecedented realm, immersed in the mysteries of the body and the will. At this moment, Feng Xingjian seemed to have a deeper comprehension of the concept of reforging his physical body and merging his will into one in the future. When one's power reached such a level, every minute change would affect the world, and one would have an irreversible connection with the entire world. Feng Xingjian did not pay any attention to the people on the ground. However, everyone on the ground was already in an unprecedented state of astonishment. This was especially so for Jacob, the head of the Holy Light clan. He stared at the figure in the sky, whose end could not be seen, and his mind was almost completely blank. At the next moment, his physical body was completely reborn, and his thoughts seemed to have returned to his physical body. How can this be? Where's Alexander? Why isn't he rushing over to protect us? Jacob's body trembled. That's not right. He has the sudden inspiration and should be able to sense Fong Xingjian's actions. Why isn't he coming over? Unless something is holding him back. Or his pupils contracted abruptly as he thought of a terrifying possibility. Unless he's also no longer a match for Fong Xingjian. He sensed this possibility with his sudden inspiration, and that's why he isn't coming over. The four aristocratic young masters were still surrounding Shan He. However, no one was still mocking or ridiculing Shan He. Shan He laughed out loud. "The four of you, how are things now?" Grand, who was standing at the side, had an expression of rejoicing. Then he was deeply astonished by Fong Xingjian's terrifying power. At the sight of this scene, a surge of hot blood filled his brain. He thought of how the Tianmin clan would probably be the number one amongst the 7 great clans from now on. Young Master Meng trembled all over. Suddenly, he saw young Master Yi crawling toward the ground slowly and shouted, "What are you doing?" Young Master Yi had smashed his face into the ground and prostrated himself on all fours. It was as if he was prostrating on the ground. Hearing young Master Meng's words, he said calmly, "I only want to survive." Young Master Yi was just about to curse out furiously when young Master Lei and young Master Long also slowly knelt down. There was no longer any hint of resistance in their eyes. Young Master Ye's face turned pale, and he heard young Master Lei say, "Don't force yourself. Fong Xingjian is extremely powerful. If we continue to persist, we'll just be sending ourselves to our deaths." Young Master Meng's face turned pale, and he clenched his teeth tightly, as if he was going to break them. He slowly knelt down, completely giving up on resisting. As the 4 young masters knelt down, more and more people followed suit. Xing let out a breath, wearing a complicated expression. Like everyone else, she had not expected that there would be so many twists and turns today. In the end, Fong Xingjian had even displayed such invincible prowess. Audrey also let out a breath. Looking at how Fong Xingjian had covered up the sky and the sun, as well as the endless shadow in the sky, there was only astonishment left in her eyes. With such martial arts and remarkable abilities, Fong Xingjian has truly stepped into the pinnacle and become a top-notch character in the world. However, just as everyone was kneeling on the ground, revealing expressions of submission, Bai Di's eyes were still filled with indignation. "What are you guys doing?" Bai Di bellowed furiously. "Are you guys really going to surrender? Are you guys going to lose the several centuries of glory that our 7 great clans have enjoyed, just like that? It's true that Fong Xingjian is very powerful, but this world isn't something that he can do whatever he wants. If he has the guts, then kill us today. Otherwise, the Holy Sea of Truth, the Mage Association, and that great emperor from the Steel Lion Kingdom would be able to kill him with a single slap. Rather than submitting to Fong Xingjian, I might as well submit to—" The beautiful lady beside him looked at Bai Di's distorted face. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she slowly retreated. She knew that Bai Di had been driven mad by the scene before him. It was as if he had fallen from the clouds into a quagmire. His countless years of hard work and preparation had all gone to waste. Moreover, the terrifying power that Fong Xingjian had displayed made it impossible for him to have the slightest interest in catching up. He seemed to be unable to take such a huge blow and had completely lost his mind. Scram! In the next moment, Fong Xingjian's gaze swept across, and Bai Di had already turned into dust with a loud thud, dissipating from the world. After killing Bai Di with a single blow, everyone present seemed to be trembling in fear. Immediately after, his gaze shrouded Jacob, and Fong Xingjian's voice reverberated in the world. "Jacob, do you submit?" Jacob's lips quivered. Without saying a single word, his legs turned to jelly, and he knelt on the ground. "From today onwards, the 7 great clans will pledge their loyalty to you, sir. Immeasurable magic, immeasurable magic." At this moment, only these 4 words were reverberating in everyone's minds. Chapter 664. With Jacob's kneeling, it meant that all 7 great clans had submitted to Fong Xingjian. However, the people who had come to the north this time around and entered the depths of the mountains were basically all core members of the 7 great clans. After they submitted, they basically represented the 7 great clans' submission. Of course, the news of Fang Xinjian suppressing the 7 great clans was only circulated within the small circle of the upper echelon of the great clans. The news that Fang Xinjian was most well known in the world was still that he had killed the undying Xia, defeated the blue sacred moonlight, and crippled the first prince. Although he was very famous, he was still not unrivaled. However, to Fang Xinjian, these were no longer important. After subduing the 7 great clans, he temporarily stayed in the snowy mountains and ordered the 7 great clans to send over their martial legacies. He wanted to master all of these martial arts and complete the refinement of his physical body for the 2nd tier of the divine level. Concurrently, the Panwu heavenly raiment was also sent back to the Great Western region by Fang Xinjian. He handed it over to Wang Xiaoyan and Fang Qian to forge the next divine level longsword for him. It could be foreseen that with the prowess of the Panwu heavenly raiment, this longsword that was a divine remains equipment would definitely be extremely powerful. 7 days and 7 nights later, at the peak of the snowy mountains, Fang Xinjian floated 10,000 lis high up in the sky, looking at the seething clouds and drifting snow. Countless manuals kept on surging in his mind. Many methods to recultivate the physical body, to become one with the spirit and body, and to combine martial will and physical body kept on flashing through his mind. Audrey flew around him, looking at Fang Xinjian with an endless longing in her eyes. The astonishing Audrey was wearing a white, furry cloak and a short blue skirt. The skirt was extremely short, revealing a pair of long, slender, and well-developed legs. She was wrapped in black stockings, showing off her beautiful figure. Coupled with her snow-white and tender face, she was like an enchantress in the snow, dancing among the snowflakes. Xinjian, are you going to strive for the 3rd tier of the divine level? How did you manage to cultivate so quickly? Are you really going to the imperial capital? Audrey circled around Fang Xinjian and asked a question from time to time. Even if she didn't get an answer from Fang Xinjian, she still enjoyed it. A few minutes later, he saw that Fang Xinjian was still in a daze. It was as if he had entered a deep state of cultivation and was not paying attention to the outside world. Audrey suddenly approached Fang Xinjian and looked at Fang Xinjian's face with a perplexed expression. The remarkable abilities, martial arts, and strength that Fang Xinjian had displayed were now in control of the 7 great aristocratic families, the Atlantis, and countless other influences. A man like this would be extremely attractive to any woman. As the #1 beauty in the Northern Ice region, Audrey naturally had requirements and fantasies for her future partner. However, no matter what she had thought in the past, Fang Xinjian's current performance had far exceeded any of her expectations in the past. He had already exceeded her expectations. The only thing that displeased her was that Fang Xinjian did not seem to be interested in her at all. At the next moment, Fang Xinjian's eyes moved, as if he was looking at Audrey. Audrey's expression froze, and she retreated rapidly while crying out, "You're awake!" Fang Xinjian's brows twitched, and the flesh and blood throughout his body suddenly squirmed intensely. He looked at his palm and clenched it hard, releasing crackling, explosive sounds. He could sense that waves of power were brewing in his body, and his body was reassembling itself in a way that had never happened before. The various secret techniques and martial arts from the 7 great clans, Holy Light, Dark Shadow, Night Massacre, Thunder King, Fervent Dragon, Reverie, and Heavenly Gates, flashed through his mind. The 10 levels of Mystical Prince and the world's top sword arts talent allowed Fang Xinjian to easily master them, and then reassemble them freely to help him reforge his body. As Fang Xinjian's body moved up and down, layers of stacking swords appeared on his skin. It was as if countless long swords had formed his body. On the level of physical particles, each of them seemed to have been completely changed, turning into 4 long swords. It was just like Fang Xinjian's heaven-connecting sword physique. However, This change only lasted for a short few seconds. At the next moment, the physical particles returned to their original state. The characteristics of physical substances undergo a tremendous change due to their structures. Feng Xingjian had read through the many manuals from the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor, Full Moon Shrine, Astral Sovereign Palace, and the 7 great clans. He had a good understanding of the methods to condense the physical body. However, in general, it was nothing more than the combination of ether particles and physical particles, changing the structure of physical substances and creating different characteristics of the physical body. In the end, it would be able to become one with the martial will. Therefore, at the next moment, Feng Xingjian's body exploded abruptly. At the next moment, the power of countless ether particles gathered once again, turning into a faint human figure. The reforging of the physical body had begun. Elsewhere in the faraway imperial city, the first prince was standing in the training room, swinging his fists and legs. He was practicing the martial arts of the ancient path of hell in a methodical manner. Although it was the most basic martial arts, he did not appear to be dispirited or belittling them in the least. Instead, he was extremely serious in his cultivation. Half an hour later, the first prince came to a stop, let out a long breath, and stopped his cultivation. He walked to the stone table at the side, rested for a while, and then poured himself some water and drank some tea. He appeared to be at ease, not showing any signs of being dispirited from having his martial arts crippled. However, at the next moment, his gaze frowned slightly, and he looked under the teapot. A piece of paper had been placed there without him knowing. He picked up the piece of paper and saw a single word written on it, Shang. Looking at the words on the piece of paper, he broke into a cold smile, seeming to be filled with disdain. In the northern ice region, in the huge ice bed at the bottom of a river, the 5th prince was sealed in layers of ice mountains. At an extremely low temperature of negative 200 degrees Celsius, the entire world seemed to have come to a standstill. At the next moment, the 5th prince opened his eyes abruptly, and 2 streams of cold light were unleashed from his body. His entire body trembled fiercely, and then the ice mountains, which weighed several million tons, dashed out from the riverbed and flew into midair. With a long howl, endless cold air scattered out in all directions, and the ice mountains, which weighed several million tons, turned into countless ice and snow that scattered out. The area within a range of 1,000 lis was covered in heavy snow. Hiding my claws and teeth, enduring all sorts of hardships, I've finally succeeded. The corners of the 5th prince's lips curled up into an evil smile. He had finally attained a breakthrough to the divine level. However, just then, he turned his head abruptly and saw a masked lady dressed in palace clothes standing there. "Mother, why are you here?" The lady dressed in palace clothes let out a cold laugh and said, "If I still didn't come, my son would have become a good-for-nothing. To think that an empire's prince can't even be compared to a be *starred and can only hide away to focus on his cultivation." "Mother," the 5th prince said furiously, "I'm only hiding temporarily. I've already cultivated the Azura path and attained the divine level. After I've stabilized my cultivation, I'll look for that Feng Xingjian to seek revenge. There's no need. If you were to go now, you'll only be sending yourself to your death, and you'll be getting further and further away from the throne." With that, the lady in palace clothes tapped out lightly with her finger, and a piece of paper floated down before the 5th prince. A faint word Shang was written on the piece of paper. "I have no idea what your father is thinking, allowing that Feng Xingjian to continue getting stronger. Come with me to meet someone. He'll have a way to kill Feng Xingjian. Only by killing Feng Xingjian and snatching his trump card will you have the chance to inherit the throne." That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.